Today's episode is presented by Dark Sky Films' A Desert, in theaters May 16th. You'll never guess what nightmares are lurking in the desert. In Dark Sky Films' twisted new thriller, A Desert, we follow a photographer on a road trip across the American Southwest who's thrust into the nihilistic underbelly of America and drags his wife and a shady private detective down into this nightmare world with him. Starring Zachary Ray Sherman, Sarah Lind, Kai Lennox, and the Jesus Lizards' David Yao, with an original score from Ty Segall. A Desert takes the noir, horror, and thriller genres and flips them on their ear. Bloody Disgusting calls it refreshingly unpredictable. Collider says the ending pulls no punches. And IndieWire praises A Desert's wild ending. Dark Sky Films presents A Desert. See it in theaters May 16th.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
You have to control yourself!
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking, you can rest assured that that's not going to happen to me. We're talking Red Rum. And we're talking The Shinning, because we don't want to get sued. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking Wendy, Darling, Light of My Life. And that's it. We're talking The Shining.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just always thought that line was really funny.
I mean, Jack Nicholson, a bit of a dream, a bit of a nightmare in this movie.
Just a little bit. So yes, everyone, we are discussing Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Stephen King's The Shining.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, based on.
I mean, truly, like I believe this should just be called Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, because as we all know, Stephen King hates this film.
Tabitha, I hate it so much.
Why didn't he just adapt my own novel? But no,
I mean, my God, Stephen, let it go. You've got your own miniseries, please.
He does have his own miniseries, which I will put my neck out for. I think that adaptation is totally fine.
It's fine.
The only thing it suffers from is A, being compared to this film, and B, being an ABC miniseries. But look at how much people like The Stand and It.
Yes?
I know.
Do
it's
they?
Fine.
I think some people do. Here's the thing. Yeah, Stephen King miniseries, they're really their own separate thing.
Yes, and that was only made so we could get an actual adaptation of the book. Which, actually, Joe, have you read this book?
I think I have. If I have it, it was a long time ago, though.
Yeah, it's funny. I read this in middle school. This is one of the first Stephen King books I read, and I wasn't wild about it. I thought it was kind of boring, to be honest.
Okay.
But also, like, I didn't know the backstory. So, like, I knew Kubrick's The Shining, and when I read the book, I was like, what is this?
Yeah, I wonder how many people have that, because I believe that if I have, in fact, read this book, I definitely would have done so after I saw the film.
Yeah, I think were you a Friends watcher?
I was, but not religiously.
There's this episode where Joey and Rachel like each read each other's books because he thinks that she's a girl for reading Little Women, and she's like, oh, you're reading The Shining, and so they swap books, and he's terrified of it. He has to put it in the freezer.
Nice. Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. He has to put Little Women in the freezer when Beth dies, but he always puts The Shining in the freezer because it's scary. But I guess in my mind, I just kept thinking, oh, it's going to be really, really, really scary. And I didn't, like, teenager Trace wasn't particularly scared by the book. I did reread it when Dr. Sleep was coming out, and I did like it more. And there actually were parts that I found scary as an adult.
Okay. Yeah. I think that the reason people end up gravitating to this is because it's so loaded. Like, from what I know or remember of the book, as well as Stanley Kubrick's film, there's just a lot going on here. Like, I think people can see a lot of themselves, for better or worse, in this story.
I think so. I confess, I'm a little mystified by this film's, like, cultural footprint, I guess I'm going to say. Not to say it's not deserving. I mean, again, this is a movie that I think each time I watch it, I like it more and more.
Right.
But I mean, like, you know, coming from a kid who's like, the first time I heard of this movie was in Twister, because it was the movie playing on the drive-in.
Right. Yes, it was. Yeah, I mean, I think that this falls prey to some of the same criticisms, especially from contemporary audiences, that something like that something like The Exorcist gets, right? Where it's of a particular cultural moment, and we don't really make movies this way. I mean, one could argue nobody made movies the way that Stanley Kubrick made movies, because it's like him, David Fincher, a couple of other people, where they become complete obsessives to the point where they maybe harm their actors and delay other films' productions, but they often end up producing these kind of masterpieces.
And I will say, and we'll go into the personal situations for a lot of the cast with this film, but I watched a lot of the bonus features. I'm sorry, I watched all the bonus features on this Blu-ray, which there weren't as many as you would think. It's like a 30-minute making of doc, another 30-minute making of doc that was made at the time it came out and directed by Stanley Kubrick's daughter, and a couple of other things, but nothing as extensive as you would think. And maybe it's because Kubrick has been dead for 25 years. Like, I don't know why we haven't gotten something else with this.
Yeah, I remember when the box set of his films came out, and I contemplated getting them on, well, I think it was just DVD at that point, but I remember not being particularly impressed with the special features. It feels like a lot of his work is overdue for something far more comprehensive, but I will say there's a lot that has been written about his films, and there's a lot of academic discourse about it, so we're not going to lack for things to talk about tonight.
No, but I will say a lot of my production history is piecemealed from that 30-minute documentary. It's called View from the Overlook, Crafting the Shining, as well as a bunch from Vincent LaBruto's 1999 biography, Stanley Kubrick, a biography, as well as Kubrick and Odyssey by Robert P. Kolker, which came out just last year.
Okay. I think I read the middle text because I did take a course on Stanley Kubrick. It was like a special summer school course. Ironically enough, the summer I came out, it was like me finding myself and watching Stanley Kubrick films twice a week.
All right, Joe. So before I get into it, though, like you are very vocal about how much you hate it when movies ape The Shining, because it's usually the same stuff that we use over and over and over again. But what are your actual thoughts on The Shining as a film?
Let's see. I like this film a lot. I don't think that it has super high rewatchability on like a regular basis. I think I watch it every 2 to 4 years, and that often feels like enough. It's not my favorite Stanley Kubrick film, although I do respect the hell out of it, particularly for its production design. And, yeah, I mean, I can see why people love it and why people hate it.
Yeah, I will be totally honest, Joe, because I've seen this movie a lot. And again, like I said, I like it more and more each time I watch it. But I was kind of like, oh, God, I got to watch this 2.5-hour movie again. And
she long.
As you said, it's not really that. I don't consider this super rewatchable either, unless I'm like showing it to someone. But just to test the waters, I got really high before I watched this.
Okay, here we go.
Just to see, because I have found that specifically with horror films that I've seen before, if I revisit them while under the influence of THC, I actually find it way more scary. Like, I get way more in the film's vibe that kind of way. And I'm happy to report that it kind of did work for this. It wasn't necessarily that I found myself super scared throughout the film, but I did find the isolation palpable palpable, like much more palpable than I ever have before.
Right. Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what parts of it you might find scary. So it's interesting that in a way it's sort of the whole general vibe or atmosphere of the film.
Yes. Now, because I don't typically get high before I watch films for this podcast, so this is also the first time I ever took notes while high. And
can you even read your own writing?
I can, but they're much shorter than usual. Like I wasn't as detailed, which I'm kind of like, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. We'll see we'll see what I drew from this on my viewing.
Right. How funny would it be if you just have notes from one section of the film where you were kind of lucid, and then the rest of it, it's just like ballroom,
honestly,
Wendy.
My biggest fear was that I was going to be like, I just get so involved with the film that I was just going to forget to take notes. And so I don't think that happened, but we'll see.
I mean, this is one of those films where there's a lot of repetition and there's a lot of cycles and also a very detailed Wikipedia page. So if you need to follow along with that plot, it'll get the job done.
I will say, though, because I was like, I just remember this movie being very slow paced. And that was a common critique of the film when it came out, because we're going to know how it was received at the time. But
right.
I actually didn't find the pacing very slow under the influence. I was honestly more surprised at how quick things progress in the film after the 30-minute mark.
Yeah, like it's a lot of setup, and then I think the brain tricks itself into thinking, and then there's Jack's slow descent into madness, and it takes forever because he's there for 5 months. And it's like, no. The film basically says, here's day 1, here's day 30, and he is over the cliff and into Looney Tunesville by then.
Yes, absolutely. And some would argue, Steven Spielberg at the time would even argue this, that Jack Nicholson was overacting. It was cartoonish in his performance.
Disagree.
Well, and that's the thing. Now Steven Spielberg loves this movie, but it's again a thing where he had to watch it several times before he was like, oh, this clicks now, which...
It does feel like one of those films where the more, I mean, you said it yourself in another way, where the more you watch it, the more you kind of come to appreciate it. But I do feel like, especially if you had read the book, if you were sort of familiar with it, or if you went into this thinking it was going to be fairly action-packed or something, you would need to take some time to settle into your thoughts.
Very much so.
And before we dig into the production history, I did just want to clarify something that we talked about on the outro of last week's episode. So we did mention we had previously talked about this. So I wanted to give a shout out to Horror Nerds at Church, which is where we previously recorded. It's obviously not going to be as long an episode, and it was a guest spot, but just to make sure that we acknowledge, we've got another conversation on this film out there.
Yes, we do. So, okay, without further ado, let's go into this production. So, yes, this is The Shining was Stephen King's third book, following Carrie and Salem's Lot. And funnily enough, this wasn't next on Kubrick's radar following the release of his 1975 3-hour-long historical epic Barry Lyndon, which did take home 4 Academy Awards, but wasn't financially successful.
No, and I've seen that one once because of the class I took, and it is a technical marvel. One of those original, we lit the film using only natural light from the set, like it's a lot of candles, but yeah, boy, that movie is not my cup of tea.
Yeah, it's I've never seen it, but the Draft House just showed it for something, and a lot of people were like, yeah, it's like you really have to, but I honestly feel like that's kind of how it is for a lot of Kubrick's films in general. And admittedly,
you just got to dial in.
Well, and that's the thing. Admittedly, if y'all go back and listen to our episode on Eyes Wide Shut, like I haven't seen a ton of Kubrick. I've seen The Shining and Eyes Wide Shut, and I think that's it.
Yeah, and I think at the time I said, we should consider doing a Clockwork Orange at some point. It's not technically a horror film, but there's a lot of horror elements in there.
And that's a book I definitely tried to read in high school, but I could not.
That one's a tough one.
Well, I couldn't with the language, and I was like, I can't do it.
If you can't crack it, you will not be able to get through that book.
Even though it's a short book, honestly. But okay, his dream project, and this is something that I'm sure is well known to a lot of people, but I, not being a Kubrick head, had no idea. His dream project was a biopic of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Oh, yeah. He tried to get that off the ground his entire career.
Yeah, which is really funny, because was it Ridley Scott who did the one with Joaquin Phoenix a couple years ago?
Like 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. Now, Kubrick said you should worry about your failures instead of your successes, because your failures mean that you're limited in your opportunities for the future. Unfortunately, as we said, Barry Lyndon underperformed, so it grossed $9.5 million domestically, not even close to the $30 million Warner Brothers needed to generate a profit. So
Right.
Napoleon was not in the cards for him. So he looked out for something that would give him that future opportunity, aka,
Oh my God.
well, something that was artistically satisfying, but also commercially viable.
I was going to say, he's one of the original directors. He's like, well, I don't really want to make a horror film, but they're so commercially viable.
Well, so here's the thing, though. He was interested. He always wanted to make, like, maybe not necessarily a horror film, but something in that wheelhouse. So at this point, like, he was like, oh, this is my chance to do it. Because he was originally he was trying to get the rights to Rosemary's Baby before he realized Polanski got them.
Oh, wow. In another universe.
Mm-hmm. Now, he was interested in gothic, sinister stories with a mystical, ghostly element.
Tabitha! He could have just done The Haunting.
Honestly, I'm surprised he didn't do that either. But so he started reading like a lot of horror novels and was particularly impressed and later influenced by Stephen Crane's 1898 story, The Blue Hotel, a seemingly simple story about a man who encounters trouble following a stay at the Palace Hotel. But the story breaks free from the norms of the period, often entering the realms of expressionism, an unusual style to encounter in American literature.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just make a little note of that because that sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm. And he also liked the idea that a person might arrive at such a place with a death wish. Now, he also read Diane Johnson's 1974 novel, The Shadow Knows, a psychological detective novel that deals with racial issues and urban violence through the deteriorating state of mind of a young woman under stress who is perhaps, or perhaps not, being stalked. He liked this so much, he actually almost considered adapting this for a hot minute, but because it was told in the first person, he found it kind of unsuitable for his vision.
Oh, your description made it sound a little bit like Carnival of Souls.
Honestly, a little bit. And I mean, it's 74, so it's 20 some odd years after that. But keep Diane Johnson's name on your periphery, though.
Okay.
In July of 1976, John Calley, the head of Warner Brothers, sent Kubrick galley proofs of Stephen King's manuscript of The Shining. And with that, Kubrick had found his source. He was drawn to the psychological underpinnings of the novel, and King was already, obviously, at this point, an enormously popular author. I think by this point, Carrie was either about to come out or it had just come out.
Okay.
But he was like, oh, this is something that could easily be transferred to the screen. But he needed to have the right to write what he wanted. And Stephen King agreed that he could adapt the story to his heart's content because he was very happy that the Stanley Kubrick would be making a film out of his book.
Tabitha, make me eat my own words.
Now, Kubrick knew he didn't want to do a conventional horror movie, and he knew from the get-go that he would be changing a lot of King's novel, something that I guess didn't get communicated to King in the early discussions. I don't know.
Like, open up the Telegraph and make sure that everybody is in the know on this.
Yes. So, King's novel, I mean, is unashamedly mystical. It's filled with ghosts and such because it's the Overlook's built in an Indian graveyard.
Oh my God, I cannot.
I know. I love that we're dipping back into that. Well, I guess maybe by this point it was the first time he had done this, but he would dip into this well several more times. There was always a question to what extent the supernatural was real, like in the film, the freezer door scene, where it's like, well, this is pretty explicitly like a ghost is doing this. But so they had to abide by some inconsistencies, making the final film, much less specific and leaving a lot of things open-ended. Why, you ask? Well,
why?
Kubrick was more interested in the ghosts as psychic echoes of things that had happened before, rather than some source of afterlife, because Kubrick did not believe in ghost stories because that would, and I quote, imply the possibility that there was something after death. And Kubrick did not believe that there was anything after death, not even hell.
Good old atheist after my own heart.
Mm-hmm. Now, King himself actually did submit a screenplay that he wrote, but Kubrick rejected it for being too literal an adaptation of the novel.
Yeah, that can sometimes be an issue when the author gets involved. They can get a little too precious.
Yes. But here's the thing. Since he wasn't going to be adapting Diane Johnson's The Shadow Knows, he reached out to her and asked her to help him write the screenplay for The Shining.
Oh, wait. Does she have a story or a screenplay credit?
It is screenplay credits for Stanley Kubrick and Diane Johnson.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yep. So we have one half of this team, a female screenwriter.
Hey, yo.
Woo! So One of his big requests, though, was that the story needed to make sense in real psychological terms, but the plot itself didn't necessarily need to be realistic. In his words, real is good, interesting is better.
I mean, words to live by.
Mm-hmm. Now, Johnson said that Kubrick wanted to know what the King novel was about, in the deepest psychological sense. He wanted to talk about that and to read theoretical works that might shed light on it, particularly the works of psychology and especially those of Sigmund Freud. I think we can all agree the elevator gushing blood is a very Freudian image.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Family hate was important, and they decided that in the case of The Shining, this was a central element. Johnson said she had the very strong impression that Kubrick was most attracted to The Shining because of the father-son relationship.
Okay, interesting. This is all going to feed my unconventional read of this film.
Good. So it's helping you, I hope.
Maybe, yeah. We'll see.
When it comes to casting, there were so many names thrown around for Jack Torrance. Names like Robert De Niro, Robin Williams, Harrison Ford. Stephen King wanted either Jon Voight, Michael Moriarty, or Martin Sheen, but he did not want Jack Nicholson.
Oh, okay.
Well, because, he was an Oscar winner for Best Actor for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1975, and he thought that because of that, people would see him and automatically think he was crazy, which his Jack was not. His Jack didn't start out crazy. He got crazier as the book goes on, but I think Kubrick's and Johnson's Jack is kind of nutty from the get-go.
He's a little unhinged, but I feel like once you start to unpack the backstory, you understand a bit why.
Yes, but unfortunately for King, Kubrick had final say over who played Jack, and while, again, we discussed this in Eyes Wide Shut, he never liked big actors or stars.
Because they take focus away.
Yes, and so he still felt this way when he got around to doing The Shining, but he looked back at all the actors from his previous films, and because Jack Nicholson was someone that he did look to cast in Napoleon, like, at some point in time, so maybe this is before Nicholson was truly a name.
Right.
He sought him out for The Shining.
Okay.
This worked for Warner Brothers because he was a bankable name. So it's like, cool, Jack Nicholson, The Shining. There you go.
Admittedly, though, I could see nearly all of the other people, like all the people on King's shortlist, I think could have made viable candidates for this role, except maybe Harrison Ford. I mean, I just rewatched What Lies Beneath, as did you, but I think it would have been harder to have seen him, particularly at this point in his career. But the others, yes.
Even Robin Williams, where I'm because again, we know that Robin Williams has that dark side to him based on all those roles he was taking.
Insomnia, baby.
Yeah. 1 Hour Photo. Like, this is a comedy, but Death to Smoochie. Oh my God, he's deranged. But I would love to see any of those actors truthfully play in this sandbox, because I do think the role of Jack Torrance, while not necessarily layered, is a fun thing to watch play out.
Yeah, it depends on how big you want to take it, but it gives you some opportunities. We'll put it that way.
Yes. But here's the thing, though. Once Nicholson was pretty much a lock, they all looked at his previous films, which led to Diane Johnson refining the Jack Torrance she had written to fit Nicholson's acting style.
Ooh, yeah, you know what? That feels like it unlocks something, because this does seem so perfectly tailored to him.
Right? But again, is that just because it's like we're 45 years distance from this, and it's like, well, yeah, Jack Torrance is Jack Nicholson. Yeah. Like, it's not Steven Weber.
Wow. I'm not going to disagree, but wow.
I maintain Steven Weber does a totally fine job in that.
He's fine. I like Rebecca De Mornay. If you're going to watch that miniseries, she's the reason to do it.
Well, but it's also because that Wendy is characterized so different than the Wendy we have in this film. And
truly.
That perfect segue. So for Wendy, this character does take a pretty drastic change from the more assertive Wendy we see in King's novel.
Okay.
But here's the thing. So, and I didn't really know a lot of this. I knew a lot of the general stuff about the Wendy of it all. But first, Kubrick thought that the Wendy that King wrote would not have stayed with Jack, because he's clearly an abuser and she would have left him. So her film counterpart needed to be less A, classically attractive, and B, have lower self-esteem. In other words, she needed to be the exact kind of person who would stay with the film's version of Jack.
Right. I don't love those descriptors, but I can see where he's coming from.
As for casting Shelley DuVall, Kubrick, this is wild, I found this in a couple different sources, but Kubrick really loved the way she cried in Robert Altman's 1977 film 3 Women, for which she was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Actress. But he handpicked her because of that.
Okay. She cries well, which, if you think about it, makes sense because what does this Wendy do for 80 to 90% of the film?
Which people didn't like about it. Which I think also, if you are coming off of the book, like, this is frustrating. This character is very, you want to shake her and be like, oh my God, just like get out, like stop screaming and just run. But at the same time, like watching this, I'm like,
I mean, there aren't that many telltale signs until it's already too late and there's 20 feet of snow blocking the escape route.
Well, and it's like, I don't know. Do we call Wendy a battered wife? Because we don't really know if he physically abuses her, but I would say it's
definitely psychological manipulation and maybe even torture.
Yeah. But okay, so before we get to the DuVall of it, let's continue. So a lot of trouble went into finding Danny. Hundreds of children in the United States were interviewed because he had to be American. But they found Danny Lloyd in Peoria, Illinois. And apparently he and Kubrick was very protective of him, right? Which, I mean, again, you would have to based on all the things.
Goodness.
And apparently, Danny Lloyd thought he was filming a drama the entire time. So I don't actually even know how much of do I think he actually saw the corpses of the girls when they're acting? No. I'm sure Kubrick was telling him this is what you're seeing. Act scared, but
yeah.
Okay. So filming began in May of 1978 and wrapped more than a year later in July of 1979.
The Kubrick touch.
Again, everyone go back and listen to Eyes Wide Shut. The bulk of filming took place in Elstree Studios in southern England, but I will say part of that 13-month shoot, there was a delay because a fire started in the Colorado Lounge where Jack types most of the time.
Right.
And pretty much destroyed the entire set and it had to be rebuilt.
Yeah, shit.
So I think that added a month to the production schedule. It should have been a neat 12 months, a year, but it went for an extra month.
Okay.
Now, again, this is the funny thing because, again, there's a hotel in Estes Park called the Stanley Hotel that everyone's like, oh, it's the Shining Hotel. The Stanley Hotel is where Stephen King was when he either A, got the idea for The Shining or started writing The Shining.
Right.
The miniseries is actually filmed at the Stanley Hotel.
Okay, so this is people confusing Kubrick's and the miniseries.
Yes, because
the book, I guess.
Well, because that's the thing, though. A lot of the interiors of the Overlook Hotel in Kubrick's film are sets in this England studio. The exterior of the hotel was actually the Timberline Lodge in Portland, it's about 60 miles east of Portland, Oregon.
Right.
But I love this. So for the interior sets they built in England, so basically any room inside this Overlook Hotel, Kubrick apparently doesn't believe in set design. This is paraphrased by the film's production designer, Roy Walker. But he says, Kubrick's mindset is, why would I suddenly come up with a new and better room when there are millions of rooms designed by very talented architects over the years?
Sure, but we still have to make fake rooms for us to shoot in?
Well, no, he didn't want someone to come up with the room, so he sent people out to take photos of hundreds of hotels all over the country and picked and chose inspiration from the hundreds of pictures he was getting. And so that's why, though, a lot of the carpet, people always talk about the main Shining carpet, but there are at least two other carpets in here, one in room 237, one leading to the bar, and it's why a lot of them don't really look like they mesh well, because they're all from different hotels around the country.
Yeah. And part of me actually kind of likes that because it feels like the hotel in a way has a mind of its own, or it's a collage of different kinds of experiences, which, as we know, in terms of a timeline, is very emblematic of how it kind of gobbles up people and turns them into ghosts.
Well, and I'm kind of glad you mentioned The Haunting of Hill House earlier, because that kind of gives me a lot of that, where it's like, it's almost like a maze. You're trapped in the house, but the hallways just keep going and blah, 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 blah.
And there's such an anonymity to hotels where some parts of them just don't feel like they mesh because they've been these pre-existing structures that have been renovated and thousands of people have gone through them and all these other things. So.
Exactly. Now, during pre-production, they built models of the interiors and used them to figure out exactly how much lighting Kubrick needed for each room, which, it's funny, it reminded me of that discussion we had in our Panic Room episode on pre-visualization via the computer.
Right.
But this is just a model version of that. So this is the analog version of what Fincher was doing in Panic Room.
Sure. It's what Kubrick might have gotten to had he lived a little bit longer and been a bit more interested in technological advances.
Yes. Well, but that's the thing, though. He was interested in technological advances. So the big thing in this movie, like for Barry Lyndon, apparently the zoom was like a big thing in that movie. For this movie, it was the innovation of the Steadicam.
Which is front and center in the shooting of this movie.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, the Steadicam, basically, it acts as a stabilizing mount for a film camera, which mechanically separates the operator, the cameraman's movement, from the camera. So this allowed for smooth tracking shots while the operator is moving over an uneven surface, or even like running and jogging and whatever. It essentially combines the stabilized steady footage of a regular mount with the fluidity and flexibility of a handheld camera, but without the limitations of a dolly and a crane.
Yeah, frees you up and it looks, well, steady, for lack of a better term.
Just a little bit. This was obviously something that Kubrick wanted to use because it's all over this movie, as you said, but he also believed that a moving camera invited audience participation into the narrative.
Oh, 100%. Like, there's a reason that so many of these otherwise kind of not static shots, but less exciting shots. You know, the things that people often remember about this movie is stuff like Danny riding around on this godforsaken tricycle. And it's like, baby, that's Steadicam. That's giving us motion.
Well, so it wasn't enough just to have a Steadicam on the shoot. He actually brought the device's inventor, Garrett Brown, onto the production and kept him very closely involved during the shoot.
Wow. Okay.
So, yes, we get a lot of tracking shots in the movie, especially the low to the ground shots at Danny's level, you know, following him on that big wheel, which, again, like on my rewatch, I was like, wow, A, we're establishing geography of this hotel, but also just illustrates how big and empty this hotel is. And also paired with all of the constant wide shots we get in this film.
Yeah, and THC Trace is going, oh God,
I was
so
just like,
isolated.
I'm so alone.
I'm cold. Oh, I just left the freezer open. Never mind.
Yeah. Now, for the performances. Okay, we all know that Kubrick is meticulous and would often film a single shot 60 plus times. I do love this reasoning, though, which I don't think we got in Eyes Wide Shut. So Kubrick could not understand why you spend all this time and money getting ready for filming and then rush through it. So he spent 5 years preparing The Shining and was going to do 70 takes per shot if he had to.
Oh, boy. I mean, Stanley, I can give you one reason. It's because it's fucking exhausting for your actors.
Well, but again, though, so here's the thing. So, like, Nicholson would give Kubrick every possible level of a performance in each take. So they would start take one with a basic take, and then Nicholson would go bigger and bigger and bigger until there was really nothing left for him to do by take 27 or 29. So
right, okay.
Then he started doing these wild things, and those are the takes you see in the film. Like, so it's the thing where it's like, yeah, if he had used any of the first 20 takes, you'd have a performance here, but it wouldn't be as unhinged as what the final cut was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an actor, so I don't know how much this takes out of you, but I imagine that that's easier for someone in Nicholson's case where you get to play manic anger. And I think it's probably a different experience, unfortunately, if you are DuVall's character who has to become increasingly hysterical and emotionally wrought.
Well, okay. So for Shelley DuVall, who apparently originally had a much bigger part in the original script, mostly because Diane Johnson really sympathized with the character. So I don't know what exactly was cut out from the script. Although
Kubrick was just like, get that women shit out of here.
I would wager that you can probably find that original script online somewhere.
Sure, at this point, yeah.
But here's the thing, though. So again, when they were looking for Wendy's, it was said, like, the actress playing Wendy needed to be willing to tolerate the intolerable longer than anyone else, and that had to come across. So whether you agree with his methods or not, Kubrick felt that he had to create that in his own relationship with DuVall. This is the polite way of saying this. There's an authenticity that he puts into his actors, and he gets them there by whatever means necessary. So, yes, Kubrick was intentionally mean to DuVall on the set and isolated her often because he wanted her to be on her last tether, which, as you've said, like, for the last hour of this movie, she's pretty much just in hysterics and crying.
Yeah. And I feel like people really glom on to this as a negative detractor. And I'm not going to argue that it can be difficult to watch this movie knowing that it was a challenge for DuVall and that Kubrick was sort of activating that. You know, he was egging it on in some ways. But I also think we need to stop pretending like a bunch of our other favorites weren't doing the exact same thing. Cough, cough, Alfred Hitchcock. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying that I feel like there's a generation of particularly male directors who thought this was the only way to get good performances out of their actors.
And truthfully, I feel like it was maybe around the beginning of the pandemic where this clip went across the internet like wildfire, where it was Shelley DuVall was late, like coming out to when Kubrick called action, and she was supposed to like walk out of the hotel into the snow, and she was late, and you can see Kubrick like berating her for this and holding up the entire schedule, and and she fights back. They're talking, but this was also around the time Shelley DuVall had that Dr. Phil appearance, that really manipulative one, and so I remember, that it was that, oh my God, poor Shelley DuVall, Kubrick did all this stuff to her, he abused her, and I never realized that footage of Kubrick's quote-unquote abuse came from Kubrick's daughter, Vivian, because she was 17 during filming of The Shining and was commissioned by the BBC to make a 30-minute behind-the-scenes documentary of the making of the film, and it was released shortly after the release of The Shining. So that clip went wild, like that was long available for like decades.
Oh, sure, but this is what the internet does. We love to dig up old things and then get really angry about it, and maybe not always put it in context. Again, folks, not excusing this, but it's like, this was not a new drama.
No, not at all. But people definitely were treating it like it was. And the documentary is actually pretty fascinating. There's not really a narrative hurdle to it. It's more so like, oh, this is Vivian. Like, just if you want to see what filming was like on The Shining, watch this documentary. I also believe it's on YouTube. It's right. I don't know. It was almost like being on set with them, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the original set visit, only it's with a famous Nepo baby.
Yes, but like DuVall addresses the way Kubrick treats her in this documentary, and that bit of him yelling at her when she failed to come out. Both Vivian Kubrick and Shelley DuVall call it, I got a real bollocking from Kubrick that day.
Jesus. Okay.
But here's a direct quote from DuVall in that documentary. And again, if you're kind of like, well, she was also being filmed by Kubrick's daughter, so like, what is she going to do? She says this, and I'm just going to read it verbatim.
Okay.
You appreciate all the pain. I mean, you always dislike whatever the cause is of pain. You always resent it, so I resented Stanley at times because he pushed me and it hurt, and I resented him for it. I thought, why do you want to do this to me? How can you do this to me? You agonize over it, and it's just the necessary turmoil to get out what you want out of it. I mean, we had the same end in mind. It was just that sometimes we differed in our means, and by the end, the means met. And I find I really respect him, and I really like him, both as a person and as a director. I'm amazed. He's taught me more than all the other pictures I've done within 1 year's time on just one picture.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I'm going to bring up something else, too, because there's a Twitter thread by a Shelley DuVall fan account that has 33,000 followers. And I'm only just going to say this because, fan accounts, I'm kind of like, but...
Yeah, it's question mark.
Yeah, but so in DuVall's later life, I believe she moved to Bastrop, Texas, because she was from Texas, and Bastrop's like just a little bit outside of Austin. But the girl who owned this fan account, like, I guess became her friend for like the last few years of her life.
Yeah, because she retreated from the public eye, and everybody was very concerned about her. We both saw that absolutely terrible movie where that director seemed like he was maybe abusing her, using her notoriety to bring fame to his movie. That's a whole other story. But I think people suddenly rediscovered, like, oh God, what happened to Shelley DuVall? We all actually really care about her.
Yes. Also, the movie Joe's talking about, everyone, is called The Forest Hills, but I would not watch that.
It's awful. Do not support it.
But nevertheless, I mean, I will link to this thread in the show notes because I don't think it's worth going through all of it, but it's very much the thread starts with, for everyone who thinks Stanley Kubrick abused Shelley DuVall, here's why, like, her life and career were not ruined by her experiences on The Shining. And it basically is like a timeline of a bunch of different interviews she had done all the way into like the 2000s, where she was like, it's fine. Like, I'm fine. Like, this was just a job. And one of her quotes even was from a 2001 interview she had. This is a quote that she did. She says, I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. Why? Because of Stanley. It was a fascinating learning experience. It was such intense work that I think it makes you smarter, but I wouldn't want to go through it again.
Okay. You know what? That's fair. That's very fair.
So I don't know. I think too by the end, because DuVall clearly had some mental struggles. I think people weren't believing her. I don't know. So again, like that is all I really have to say on the matter. And make of it what you will. But by all means, go look at that Twitter thread if you want to.
Yeah, it's complicated, and you're allowed to be angry at Stanley Kubrick. You're allowed to think, oh, maybe I should reconsider this because of the person who maybe was undergoing trauma says that they're fine. We should take them at their word.
Right.
I think it's not as simple as we would maybe like it to be, because the reality is that in these kinds of interactions, it isn't necessarily good person, bad person.
Right. Exactly that. So, okay. done with that.
Okay.
The Shining is released in 10 theaters on May 23rd, 1980, and gets a nationwide release a month later. And it grosses $44 million. Against, I think, a budget of supposedly $19 million. I think that's what we're looking at here.
Okay.
But critical reception, as we kind of hinted at earlier, was mixed. Now, we're looking at an 83% of Rotten Tomatoes today, and Letterboxd users have given it a 4.2 out of 5 or an 8.4 out of 10. But when it came out, a lot of people, critics included, didn't really like the film that much. And as we mentioned, Stephen King certainly didn't like it. The slow pace was commonly criticized. Some critics said it was hard to connect with any of the characters, and a big common critique was, it's not scary.
Oh, come on. Okay.
I mean, look, I confess, y'all, I've never really latched onto, like, oh, The Shining is one of the scariest movies ever made train. Again, like, this time watching it while high was the most scared I've ever been while watching it. Right. Not to say I shit on people who do think it's a scare, because I know a lot of people that this is one of their, like, top 5 scariest films of all time. I never came back to this movie for the scares.
You know what? I think that's fair. I'll confess, I don't find this super scary either, but as I said, I think I'm just too removed from it. Like, I don't feel like I'm part of the generation that saw this and really latched onto it at the time. So I just rediscovered it when people had been telling me it was one of the best scary movies ever made. Mm-hmm. And I feel like maybe there's a slight conflation between best horror movie and best made or best looking horror film, because I mean, this is quote unquote elevated before elevated was a big thing, right? Like, it was a well-respected director who dipped his toe into genre water and got these fantastic performances, and it has really stood the test of time. Like, this movie still looks incredible.
Mm-hmm. And he would only make 2 films after this, Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut.
Jesus Christ, I hate that statistic. Thank you.
So here's the thing. So looking at Kubrick's filmography as a whole, The Shining was one of 2 films of Kubrick's last 11 films, the other being Eyes Wide Shut, to receive no nominations from the BAFTAs. It was the only one of Kubrick's last 9 films to receive no nominations from either the Oscars or the Golden Globes. Instead, it was Kubrick's only film to be nominated at the Razzie Awards, including Worst Director for Kubrick and Worst Actress for DuVall. And this was, by the way, the very first Razzies ever.
Honestly, just further proof that the Razzies were shit right out of the gate.
But here's the thing. On March 31st, 2022, the Razzie Committee officially rescinded DuVall's nomination, stating, and again, don't know how I feel about this, we have since discovered that DuVall's performance was impacted by Stanley Kubrick's treatment of her throughout the production. And that's why they rescinded it.
Those guys can go fuck themselves.
I'm just like, or you can just say it's a good performance.
Oh, here's the other thing. Let's acknowledge that whether you think she is being victimized and we're actually seeing the proof of it on screen, or if you think this is just a fantastic performance, it is a great performance. I watched this movie and I'm like, DuVall is killing it in this role.
Yeah. I mean, like, this poor, and again, when you're thinking about the 60 plus takes, and there's a big like rumor that the staircase scene with the baseball was 127 takes, but apparently a lot of people on production have fought back at that, saying it was not nearly that many. Okay. But again, even if it's quote unquote just 60 takes.
Yeah.
I mean, she's having just like at a certain point, your tears run dry, you know?
Right? Yeah. Oof.
So, but yeah, it's gone on to become a cultural landmark, you know? I think I knew this so much as a kid. You know, obviously I said Twister. There were like little interstitials between commercials and Cartoon Network that homage The Shining. Obviously you mentioned The Shining, The Simpsons. Like, in children's entertainment, they're doing The Shining. So it's like this movie, as I said, this cultural footprint is everywhere.
Yeah, it's the best part of Ready Player One, which arguably is a terrible piece of shit movie.
I know. It's I was surprised at how much I you know me. I don't really leave a movie being like, ugh, like I hated it. I really did not like Ready Player One.
No.
But okay, Joe, so what happens in this movie?
Okay, so I'm going to start off the top by acknowledging 2 sources I'm going to come back to over the duration of this plot. So one is Rob Egger, who has a piece called Mirrors, Deception, and Denial. I want to say that the parts I was looking at were chapters 16 through 18, which are on The Shining, but I think he's actually gone through Kubrick's entire filmography, but this is for collative learning. And then the other piece is a Reddit thread, which is how I I got started on my unconventional reading. So I'm going to credit user Noir Adnod, and they wrote a piece or a reaction called "The Shining is about Jack Torrance dealing with oppressed homosexuality." And I'm going to suggest that they meant to write suppressed and not oppressed there.
Yep. Okay, that's a good start.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Reddit can be filled with loons and conspiracy theorists and all sorts of weird shit, but also sometimes make very, cogent, well thought out arguments. And there were pieces in both of these sources that I don't necessarily agree with, or even I think they're maybe taking things a stretch too far, but there was enough in here to get me started on something where I thought, okay, this is a slightly different read of the film. Because I think, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot that can be said about The Shining, right? Like, this is about domestic abuse. This is about alcoholism. This is about a ghost story. It's about cycles of violence that manifest over multiple caretakers and, all this other kind of stuff. And I was really interested to see how someone done anything with a purposefully queer read of this. Well, and there's two pieces that I ended up finding that you can actually see a certain amount of connective tissue.
Well, and I think also, whenever we cover a juggernaut of a film like this, it's always kind of like I always enter these episodes, what else can we possibly add to this conversation? Yeah. So many things have been written and said about The Shining. Why cover it? And so I think reads like that, as outlandish as they may or may not be, are the reason why.
Yeah. And then we also get to talk about all the other stuff that people frequently talk about. And we also get to talk about all the other stuff that we like, including the production design on my favorite cinematic bathroom of all time.
Is it the 237 bathroom? Oh no, it's the red one. It's the public
one,
bathroom.
Yes. Dude, to the point that when it shows up in Hannibal, because we know that Brian Fuller does a bunch of things that are nods to The Shining in the right way, by the way, folks. I definitely squealed when I saw it on Hannibal.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I forgot completely about the carpet at room 237, and the fact that has not taken on the same life as the other carpet has. I want that carpet it's like a mermaid on the carpet. It's so pretty.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that would naturally lend itself to you, but I think it's because the other one, the main one that everyone always fixates on, is essentially a sex carpet. It's it's the symbols of sex. They're intertwining and stuff.
Any carpet could be a sex carpet if you fuck on it.
Wow. Really showing your cards there, Trace.
Yes. I'm just saying, bring that 237 carpet back. That is good. I like that. That needs to be
fair. Okay, that's your big point. That's your takeaway.
I mean, I'm not wild about the yellow carpet leading to the bar, but
I like it. I think it's fine.
Well, but again, it's very distinct. All of these carpets are very distinct from one another.
That is true. Yes.
So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your Premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. I hope you're ready for the most dippable chicken in McDonald's history. Dip it in all the sauces. Dip it in that hot sauce in your bag. Dip it in your McFlurry. Your dip is your business. McCrispy strips at McDonald's.
Okay, so The Shining opens with an aerial helicopter shot of a yellow punch buggy traveling through the country, well, basically up the mountain road as the credits are rolling. And then I will confess, I had forgotten that Dr. Sleep was kind of gently cribbing from some of this. It does hurts more than these titles, but this movie is broken up into days and other times. So we begin with the interview.
Yes. Okay. I was curious, though. Does this work for you, or do you feel like they are not necessary?
At times they feel like they're building to something, but as I was, it's a different process when I'm taking very active notes because I know I'm going to be going through the plot with you. Mm-hmm. So when I realized that we definitely go over a week period with these times, I was just like, I don't understand why we're doing some of them.
I was a little confused too. It's funny. It would be interesting, or I would get it more maybe if we started in media res and it was like, hey, on Thursday or whatever the fuck day, this is what's happening.
Right, and then you flash back to Saturday so you can see how we got to Thursday. But yeah, we're definitely not doing that.
I guess for me, it's really when we start doing the days, because I get it. We have interview, we have closing day, and then we immediately cut to a month later. But then after that, it's just, we're just going through essentially
like Monday, Wednesday, Sunday.
It's Monday? A week. It's basically, So by the time this movie ends, I think we're a month and a week. So we're 5 weeks into this stay.
And he's supposed to be here for 5 months, so our boy Jack did not last long.
Yeah, you need to make it 5 months. Couldn't even make it 5 weeks.
Yeah. He was never gonna last the winter. But. Okay, so the interview at the Overlook Hotel. Jack Torrance, who is played by Jack Nicholson, meets with Stuart Ullman, aka All Man, because they frequently pronounce it All Man, not Ullman.
Like All Man. He's All Man.
Which is going to come into this suppressed homosexuality reading. Because if you think about it, who are all the people who are actively seducing Jack? For the most part, it is women, and then there is one old hag in room 237.
Which, again, I think that's the thing for me is the first time I saw this, I don't find the woman in 237 very scary. Like, I'm just kind of like, it's fine. It's like a woman corpse. But I will say, when I reread The Shining for Dr. Sleep's release, it's Dr. Sleep the book, by the way, not the movie.
Right.
The chapter when Danny walks into 237, I don't know what I was doing, but like something really just chilled me to the bone, because the chapter ends with like Danny walks in, and then he felt a pair of cold, dead hands wrap around his neck. And for some reason, like that just scared the shit out of me more than anything than this movie did.
Well, this presents it as a bit of a seduction, right? I mean, I do think that for the duration of this film, it's mostly Jack being persuaded by the Overlook's ghost to say, hey, this place is great. Don't you want to stick around here? All of that shit that you brought with you to the hotel, you can leave it behind. And I do think that the woman in 237 is a kind of embodiment of that, but also it's illustrating in a very visual way the rot beneath the surface. Whereas Danny's interaction, which of course we don't see in this movie, we just get to see the aftermath, is like, oh, this child is helpless to a certain degree, and we're left to imagine how bad that could be, because we just see, the bruising on his neck, we see the pulled sweater and so on, and he's effectively exhibiting a trauma response for the rest of the film.
Oh yeah, he's like catatonic.
Yeah, which again will come into play. Okay, so yes, Jack is meeting with Stuart, and these moments are cross-cut with scenes in Denver as Jack's son Danny, who is played by Danny Lloyd, tells mom, Wendy, Shelly DuVall, about his imaginary friend Tony. So he of the red rum doesn't want to live at the hotel. So Tony is, yes, I'm going to say a bit of a trauma response, but also has elements of The Shining in that he, whatever, can foretell the future and also provide Danny with confronting visual imagery.
I do love this too. One of the reads I saw, I think it was from one of the producers actually, maybe it was Diane Johnson herself, but saying how, because Danny can obviously see a lot of these things because of The Shining. Although some people were shutting down Wendy seeing these things. I was like, Wendy definitely sees things at the end of the film. But
she definitely does. Yeah.
Not throughout. But so they're saying, oh, well, no, Danny inherited The Shining not from his mother, but from his father, which is why Jack is so susceptible to these things. But he's also weaker than Danny.
Yeah, I could believe that. I did find one read. I can't remember if it was in that same Reddit thread. There were a bunch of different, hypothetical responses to it. But I think somebody suggested, Danny is in some ways a bit like the Star Child from Stanley Kubrick's 2001, where Danny represents the hope and the possibility, but also the innocence that can be lost. So like Danny could very easily go the path of Jack because of the progeny kind of situation. But that's why he also needs to be protected, because he's the innocent who has the gifts that can help us to move forward.
Well, and he, as we'll learn in Dr. Sleep, he does go the path of his father.
He does indeed, yeah. It's really hard not to kind of retroactively read some of this. I'm not going to say that I love Dr. Sleep or anything, but I do think that Mike Flanagan understood the assignment.
Well, maybe like The Shining, it'll just take you about 10 more viewings to really get on Dr. Sleep's wavelength.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I need to get real high.
Oh, actually, maybe.
Maybe. Probably couldn't hurt, so... Okay, so Jack gets the down low on this job, and we learn that he will be there for 5 months. He's responsible for running the boiler to heat the hotel, repair any damage from the winter snows. They can expect that they will be snowed in because we just know this is what's going to happen. Are you ready for that? And they specifically say, you will be very isolated. They don't say cabin fever, but that's effectively what we're talking about. And they want to know if Jack is going to be able to handle it. And Jack says, yeah, I'm writing the great American novel, which, oh, Jesus. It's like, what are you, like Holden Caulfield? Get out of here.
God.
But he says he's going to be fine. And then he also assures them, oh, yeah, my family's also definitely going to love it and be fine with it.
Well, but he says this even after he gets the story of Charles Grady. Oh, my wife loves horror movies. She'll be crazy about this.
Yeah. And it's also hard not to read into how much foreshadowing or how much dramatic irony is in some of this language. Like, I don't think The Shining is a particularly funny movie, but you can read it through this lens of, oh my God, everything Jack says comes to pass, but in a horrific way.
There's like a dark, mean irony in some of the editing for this movie. Like, there's one specific moments later where I think someone says something about how Jack's fine or Jack's working on his book, and then we just cut to him, and he's doing this creepy Jack Nicholson face, just staring like in a catatonic state out at Wendy and Danny as they're playing, and I laughed. I was like, oh, that was funny.
It is, and there's not a ton of them, and it is quite dark, but these moments are definitely there.
I will say I found it surprising, too, that we specifically mentioned the boiler in this scene, because that is a huge part of King's climax in the novel that is completely removed from this film.
Yeah, and I think one of the bigger issues that King took with this film, we're like, damn it, they took out the boiler!
But I think, though, like, at the end, because Stephen King's novel has more hope ascribed to it in the ending, like Jack sacrifices, he comes out of his like possessed haze to blow up, to stop the boiler and save his family, but he dies with it, and so it's a self-sacrifice, and we don't have anything like that in this movie.
No, this movie is very fatalistic, which I think, again, is more appropriate or maybe just better suited for a conventional horror film.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so yes, we do get this mention of the 1970 tragedy when caretaker Charles Grady killed his family with an axe, and then he died by suicide with a shotgun. And yeah, Jack says, don't worry, that won't happen to me. Ha ha. Okay, so we hop back to Denver, and Tony, the imaginary friend of little Danny, says that Jack already got the job. So this is a done deal. Now we just have to accept our fate.
I love this too, though, because the score like pops in at, well, I'm saying random, but like you wouldn't think that there would be a place for like an ominous score like this. And I'll give credit to Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkin for the score here. But like whenever he calls them to say he got the job, like the score, like the boom,
just kicks in.
It just kicks in. And it's like, oh, you want us to know this is not a good idea.
This is not a good thing. Things are not going to get good from here on out. Yeah. So Danny does have this vision of blood cascading out of the elevators. And we also see the Grady, I'm going to say twins. I've seen some people say that they are just sisters. I don't think that they're identical. They're just in identical outfits, but they are played by Lisa and Louise Burns.
So I think I looked at this too, because I didn't know about this, but I think the actresses playing them are identical twins.
Yeah.
But specifically Ullman says, oh, they're his daughters. It's 8 and 10. So like they're different ages. When it's what he tells Jack. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where the things we're told and what we see don't quite match. And Kubrick is such a perfectionist. And I'm partially going to save that to cover my own ass because I'm going to bring in some very minute, seemingly inconsequential details to help support part of my read.
Okay.
And we know what a stickler Kubrick is for things like continuity and taking countless innumerable shots. So I have to assume that he would have staged certain elements of the production and wanted certain things in the performances to support certain types of readings.
Well, and bear in mind, though, the look of the twins themselves and like the way they're shot, because they're always, standing next to each other in the little bows and their dresses and stuff, that is a direct reference to Diane Arbus's 1967 photo, Identical Twins.
All right. Okay.
So
love it.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the vision that Danny has seen. It doesn't make sense to us in this particular context. We just understand we're moving to this hotel, images of horror, weird shit going on. And then we cut to black. And then when he wakes up, we realize, oh, this is because he fainted while he was brushing his teeth. So a doctor is now on scene, played by Ann Jackson, and she examines Danny. And this is where I'm going to start to introduce my unconventional reading. So, a couple of different points here. So when the doctor is conducting her examination of Danny, we can see that he is reclined on his bed and there is a bear pillow beneath him. Mm-hmm. And there is bear imagery littered throughout this movie, including the most notoriously queer moment of the film, which is, of course, the man in the bear outfit who is giving head to a man.
So the only thing is, though, that's a dog, not a bear.
It is not. It is often referred to as either a dog or a bear, and you have to decide which one you want to believe in.
Interesting. Well, and in King's novel, it's a bear. But I'm sorry, in King's novel, it's a dog. So maybe I'll just buy into that. Kubrick made it a bear.
Because there's honestly, there's bears all the way throughout this entire movie, and they often only appear in scenes with Jack or Danny.
Interesting. Okay, continue.
Okay, so this bear does end up... It's weird, in this article, obviously it's linked to in the show notes if you want to go and take a look for yourself, but there's side-by-side images of a bunch of different things, and this bear pillow actually has a distinct visual look that is similar to the elevators, just in terms of the way the eyebrows look like the markers of which floor you're on over top of the elevator and so on. It's interesting stuff, but okay, so here we go. Okay. Egger says, note this bear pillow and the dialogue, which he finds is suggestive of abuse. So the dialogue in question, Danny says, Tony is a little boy who lives in my mouth. And the doctor says, if you were to open your mouth, could I see Tony? Danny says, no. Doctor says, why not? Because he hides. Where does he go? To my stomach. Does Tony ever ask you to do things? And then Danny says, I don't want to talk about Tony anymore. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, you're like, oh, okay, this is about a boy and his imaginary friend that he doesn't want to talk anymore about because the imaginary friend also shows him dark things. Mm-hmm. It also sounds an awful lot like people who have been sexually abused talking about things. And if we're thinking about the bear scene and the fellatio and potential readings of incest, we're talking about mouth stuff. We're talking about things that Danny doesn't want to talk about because he doesn't have the language to unpack it.
Yeah, no, I can tell, because honestly, it's interesting, because I saw there's a European cut of this film, but I didn't really go into the differences of versions, because I'm just like, who cares? This is the version Kubrick wanted, but...
Yeah, and there's a couple of really key distinguishing bits, but they're not so dissimilar that it's, this is the European cut and this is the American. It's a couple of differences.
But this scene with the doctor is not in the European cut, so we essentially go from Danny passing out of the bathroom to, I'm assuming, just straight into closing day.
Probably, yeah. Which is interesting.
I think it's very ominous, actually. But I do like the inclusion of this doctor scene. But I agree. The way Danny is talking... Because, honestly, I was surprised when she walks out and, there's that infamous shot of Shelly DuVall holding that cigarette that is just 2 inches of ash.
Yeah.
But she says, I think Danny's fine. And I was like, really? Yeah. That's what you got from that conversation? I'm not a therapist, admittedly, but still...
Yeah. So this is the moment where we discover that Tony appeared after Jack dislocated Danny's shoulder in a drunken rage and that Jack hasn't drunk in 5 months. So P.S. I don't know how you lose the scene and then explain all of the issues with alcoholism later on in the film, but okay.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, but maybe it's just like he's acting kind of crazy, so it's understandable.
Yeah, you would still take away that, okay, he's looking for drinks that aren't there and he's hallucinating and all this other stuff. But I want to follow this up because on the table in between the doctor and Wendy, there's a newspaper article that has the words illness as metaphor on it. And this is a real article. It's written by Suzanne Sontag, who is pretty fucking famous. And this was a very controversial essay that claimed that the medical profession has a tendency to mistakenly label physical health symptoms as manifestations of psychological problems. So you can read this as this doctor is dismissing Danny's health problems and it's a mistake. Like, she is either overlooking or deliberately ignoring the abuse because she's saying like, oh, okay, well, I don't see a problem here. And sure, the easy read of this is, okay, Danny fainted, kids faint, there's nothing here. But this is also a doctor willfully overlooking symptoms of abuse and saying, no, this kid is fine.
Can we chalk this up to it being 1980?
Potentially, yeah.
A genuine question. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of conversations about the rise in therapy and doctors kind of noticing particular things and encouraging people to open up and get treatment, like seek it out. And that was happening in the back part of the 70s. Like, remember when we were talking about things like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Separate Lives? That's when the rise to sort of the me generation was really starting to come into play. And with it, seeing therapists and so on, like opening up to people. But I don't know about symptoms of child abuse.
I don't know. But nevertheless, from a 2025 standpoint, this therapist does not do a good job.
She's definitely not reading all the symptoms now. Okay, let's jump to closing day. So we watched the family drive up to the mountains. We're talking about the Donner Party, haha, true crime, but also what happens, how people can go mad when they have to deal with isolation and, essentially getting locked in the snow and so on.
What happens in this movie?
Exactly, yeah. So we're foreshadowing some nastiness to come, albeit no cannibalism in this movie.
No. It's actually a fairly, I'm not going to say violence-free. There is violence in this film, but it's not... Again,
it's a bloodless film for the most part, except for poor Scatman Carruthers.
Yes, and then that elevator, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we get to the Overlook, and Jack and Wendy get a tour from Stuart as the camera zooms in and out on Danny, and he's seeing the Grady twins in the games room, and it's, we're setting things up. But I'm going to bring Egger back in here, because one of the things that, again, this is stuff that's only actually possible if you have HD. So like people wouldn't have been able to catch these nuanced references on the big screen or even maybe VHS cassette because the print would have been so tiny. But we now know, because we can pause it and zoom in and stuff, that Jack, when he gets picked up by Stuart, so it's just him and then they collect Wendy to go on this tour. But Jack is reading a January 1978 issue of Playgirl. And one of the articles on the cover is incest, why parents sleep with their children.
Oh, missed that.
Yeah, like you would have to know to pause. Like I was like, he's reading a magazine. And then I read this thing, I'm like, Playgirl, which back in the day, we should know Playgirl and Playboy were both known for actually including very good, very well-written articles. But Playgirl would also have nude men in it. So like Jack Torrance is sitting here potentially, maybe reading an article, but he could also be looking at pictures of dicks. Well, also, like, unless you think, it's just, it's a funny little tidbit that he has this. That was a very clearly intentional choice by Kubrick to have him reading this magazine. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we get this tour. Stuart shows Jack and Wendy their cozy and homey apartment. If you pause when we see the image in Danny's room, so we see that he has a little single bed. It's a bit sparse, but there's, stuff in there. There is also a picture of two bears hanging above the bed. Oh, more bears. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We also get our introduction to, hey, there's a snowcat here that you can drive through the snow. There's a hedge maze that you probably don't want to go into in the winter. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. And we're also getting the hotel's history. So it was built in 1907, and yes, on the Indian burial grounds, to which I just put, "Oh, Stephen," in my notes.
Yeah, but and this is set in the film, though, too.
It is, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
I mean, as I said, there's a number of different ways to read this. I came across a couple of people inferring that a lot of this has to do with, like, we literally say the words "white man's burden" when Jack is drinking in the gold ballroom. But, like, when we hear that the Overlook Hotel was built on an Indian burial ground, it's like, oh, okay, so maybe those elevators have a little something to do with some indigenous genocide and the blood that is on the hands of everyone who has walked through this hotel.
Okay. Well, and then that's the thing is, I think, I guess I always envision these as, true ghosts, like malicious spirits. But I like, and Halloran will tell Danny a semblance of this whenever they're having their talk. But I do love Kubrick's idea of, like, no, they're just like echoes of the past. Because
yeah, like, no one's actively seeking to harm anybody here, but they are looking to have influence.
Yes. I think, though, every time I've ever watched Halloran's, like, chat with Danny, whenever they're alone and he's telling him, think of them like images in a picture book or something like that. I always thought that he was telling him that to be like, I thought he was lying, to be like, no, like, they're going to hurt you. But if I tell you, oh, they're just like things in a picture book, then you'll close your mind off to the idea that they will hurt you, and then they won't hurt you. Like, you're not going to give them the power to hurt you.
Yeah, which definitely does feel like something we lean into more when we get to Dr. Sleep, right? Like, kind of turn off your powers because that's part of what makes you so attractive to them.
Yes, but I guess that what he's saying is true. What I just said is true, but it's not that he's lying to Danny. It's, well, like, I guess the thing is, like, do you think Halloran leaves this hotel knowing that there is a chance that Danny can be harmed by one of these spirit echo whatever the fuck things?
Well, yes, and I think that's why he specifically says room 237. Don't go into room 237, because I think he knows that that's like the worst element. There seems to be something about the hotel where if a bunch of other people are there, you're more or less safe. It's just that if it's just you, that isolation makes you vulnerable. And then, of course, because Danny is so tuned into some of this stuff, it feels like he's broadcasting or maybe drawing people in.
Yeah, he's like a beacon.
Yeah. But again, how much of this is me knowing where the story will go, and retroactively reading it?
Well, and that's the thing, though, that Dr. Sleep, because the book of Dr. Sleep did not get a good reception. Like, people did not like that book, which is funny that the film had a mostly positive reception, but not overwhelmingly positive reception. But yeah, because I guess they do retcon that a bit, where it's like, oh no, like the entity in the hotel is attracted to the shine, which is also why they go for Jack Torrance. But but again, then I'm kind of like, well, shit, did maybe Stephen King like pull some of that then from Kubrick's film?
Entirely possible. It feels like all of these adaptations, book or film or miniseries, are in a kind of conversation with each other. And that's maybe the virtue of getting to revisit text, not just like, oh, we're watching The Shining 45 years later, but also, when you make a sequel and then you make a movie of that sequel, you get to then enter into conversation. Like, I mean, I think one of the reasons that Flanagan's adaptation gets so praised is because he's actually negotiating being a sequel to this movie as well as that book.
But I think also at the same time, and you know how much I love Dr. Sleep, but at the same time, like, going so far into exploring this mythology does kind of make The Shining less interesting.
Oh, God, yeah. Because we're starting to explain the mystical, and part of the strength of this film is that we get just enough about The Shining and just enough about the hotel to understand. But as Kubrick said, we don't need to make it real. We just need to make it interesting.
Well, and I guess that's the thing, too. Like, Kubrick never would have directed Dr. Sleep, or at least not made Dr. Sleep as a direct adaptation of that book, because it's too explicitly supernatural.
Yeah. He liked to keep it a little unknowable. Yeah. Okay, so the second last stop on this tour is that gold ballroom, and we make note, specific reference, that there is no booze over these 5 months.
Oh, yeah. Which, and also, the days before the internet.
Right? Yeah.
Cabin fever, I get it.
You're watching a lot of television, reading a lot of books.
But I'm going to tell you right now, though, I think I'd be able to do this because even just looking at that freezer with all the meat, I'm like, I mean, I don't know how you open this gallon-sized can of Heinz's sweet relish and then somehow use it all, but...
Oh, yeah, it's going to go bad unless you're having the exact same meal every day that week.
I would have so much fun in this hotel, minus the ghost.
I feel like I would enjoy it a la Jack Torrance. You know, I'm just looking forward to some peace and quiet. I'm just going to like watch movies, read some books, maybe do a bit of writing. And then I would probably lose my mind about a month in. Exactly the same as this.
I guess 5 months. 5 months does...
That is a long fucking time.
I wonder how much money he was getting paid. Because they don't actually say his rate, but... But also, you get to stay in this hotel, and it's your castle. It's your castle for 5 months.
Yeah, it's an experience unlike any other. But also, you might end up dead.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so at this point, this is where we do introduce head chef Dick Halloran, as we mentioned, played by Scatman Carruthers. And he is making references to Doc. That is the first hint that he understands how The Shining works, and he recognizes it in Danny. And he seems lovely. I'm not gonna go so far as to say magical Negro, but for the times, and because this is our one person of color in this entire fucking movie, it's a little hard to get away from at times.
I do like the performance he gives, though. I mean,
he's great.
If anything, he's just really not in the movie enough. And I get why he's not in the movie enough, but I think also we'll talk about the way the film changes his fate, which is interesting.
Different.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting the walk-in freezer, so we're still establishing the geography. We're potentially laying out some areas where you could, lock somebody in the future if you needed to. Okay, so let's jump ahead to 1 month later. So everybody has left the hotel. We are down to just the Torrance family. Wendy brings breakfast into Jack, who is in bed. He's had a late night, and we see that Danny is riding around and around and around. And Jack mentions feeling a sense of deja vu for the hotel, whereas Wendy was initially scared of it. And to me, that's kind of the thesis of the movie, right? Like, Wendy isn't necessarily... Unfortunately, she's a bit of a bystander in a lot of this, right? She gets caught in the crossfire between the hotel and Jack. But she does have a certain level of intuition. Like, she's clearly doing this because she thinks her husband needs it.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I showed up here and I didn't give two shits about you or the kid. I was just thinking about myself, and I love it.
Well, but that's also the thing, though, where it's like, I mean, we know he's quit drinking for 5 months, supposedly. And I think even for her, it's kind of like, oh, good. Like, there's absolutely no way he can drink for the next 5 months at this hotel. So honestly, like, whatever other like downside there is to this, and obviously, hopefully he writes his book, his great American novel, but I don't have to worry about him possibly drinking on this and at this job.
Yeah. So in her mind, it probably seems like a good idea. We should also note that there is a weird inconsistency in the amount of time that we say has passed. So Wendy says he hasn't drunk for 5 months. So we initially think, oh, that's how long ago he dislocated Danny's shoulder, even though he doesn't have it. And then later in the film, we'll actually say that Jack gets really mad, and when he's talking to Lloyd, he says, it's been 3 goddamn years. And it's like, Okay, so which is it?
No, I think it's both. I think he did hurt him 3 years ago, and he didn't stop drinking until 5 months ago.
Yes, and in my reading, it's we're drinking, and maybe that is contributing, or we're using the drinking to hide the fact that we have been abusing Danny for all that time.
Entirely possible. Well, that's the thing, too, is like, like, it's not, there's no way he just hurt Danny once,
Yeah, like there was the worst time, which is when it became publicly noticeable. And, I think there's another version of the story where Wendy keeps trying to find a way, or she can't process it. But like, you would take your child in for a dislocated shoulder and they would start to take notes of, are these recurring patterns of behavior? What is going on in this house?
Also, to go back to that doctor from earlier in the film, the fact that she doesn't request a visit from child services after Wendy tells it, even though it was a long time ago, but like, come on. Or, actually though,
it's because they just moved to Denver a month before.
Well, still, though, like, that doctor should have been like, I'm going to have Child Protective Services give you a visit.
Right? Yeah, like, where is your husband? Where are you? Oh, the 3 of you are going to go live by yourself in an isolated hotel for 5 months? Red flag, red flag, red flag, Wendy.
But there's no booze unless a ghost gives it to you.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so, after Wendy admits, she was scared of it, we get this dissolve and we see Jack not writing, but bouncing tennis balls off of the lobby walls. We should note that that is where the indigenous artwork that Wendy looked at earlier is. So again, if you're reading this as a bit of like indigenous genocide, white people being awful, this is Jack not giving a fuck about like the indigenous artwork in the hotel. And then we see Wendy and Danny exploring the hedge maze, which of course is helpful, and it will save Danny's life later on in the film.
This maze, the overhead shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, another big change in the novel. In Stephen King's novel, these are topiary animals that come to life. Obviously, this is before CGI, but apparently, from the get-go, nobody liked the topiary animals in the book. They thought it was very stupid.
I love I mean, we both seen the miniseries, and that is ABC miniseries level CGI budget. So it's not, it doesn't look good. But I do kind of love the idea of like a hedge maze monster.
I really do love the idea of it too. I get like, I think if they did it here, it wouldn't have looked good anyway, unless we're doing, I guess, maybe some kind of like
stop motion, claymation.
Yeah, like Harryhausen stop motion stuff. But again, like the film was evolving into a much more psychoanalytic frame of mind. So Kubrick was like, no, we're going to do a fucking maze.
Freudian right there.
So what they built, like the actual like big maze that they're walking through, was about 2/3 the size of the maze that's implied by the model.
Okay.
Before this overhead shot, so they did like an actual like crane shot of the model itself, but then they built the center section of the maze that Danny and Wendy are walking through, next to an apartment block.
Oh, okay.
And then basically they shot that overhead, carved it out, and superimposed it over the shot of the model, and that's how you get. Because honestly, I was looking at this and I was like,
how did they fucking do this?
I thought it was animated at first. I was like, did they just like draw in like figures? Because I mean, they kind of look because they're yellow. It kind of looks cartoony, but no, it's a superimposition.
Wow, I think it looks great.
Yeah,
yeah. It's a very fun. It's one of those you didn't have to do it, but I so appreciate that you did, because it's just that extra little mile, right? You're like, oh, I love the way that this translates. So
yeah, I will say I watched this with my mother-in-law who was visiting this weekend, and after this scene, because I think next we cut to the title card of Tuesday, and my mother-in-law just goes, "Well, did they ever get out?"
I love your mother-in-law.
She's a movie talker, but she sometimes asks very funny questions.
Okay, so we watch movies with her at home, and then we enjoy ourselves. Is what I'm hearing.
She'll be quiet in the movie theater, but if you watch them with her at home, she will be talking, and she loves to like predict. Like, oh, is this what's going to happen? It's like,
okay.
I don't know. Let's find out together.
I will say I do that a lot for television at home, where I'm just like, oh, she should not be doing. Oh my god, well, she fucking asked for it. She went investigating, and then it got her, and it's I don't know. There's something fun about having that level of engagement, as long as everybody in the room is on board.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It was a fun watch.
There we go. Okay. So Wendy hears about an incoming snowstorm as we are getting ready for the day. And this is when Danny has a weird experience. So we're riding along, and then we stop. And we have stopped right in front of the locked door for room 237.
Yeah.
And then he gets a weird vibe. So he frantically pedals away. And that weird vibe coincides directly with the start of Jack seeming to have a breakthrough. So he's typing at the typewriter. He's having a good go at it. And unfortunately, this is when Wendy draws his ire, because she comes in to talk to him. And he institutes a new, very belligerent rule. Don't bother him when he is working. And then, honestly, this is the line where I just say, oh, I'm packing my bags and I'm walking out because you're a goddamn motherfucker. If somebody said, why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here? You're like, okay, Jack, we're done.
So I also think this is a great moment of acting from DuVall, because there's so I think it's after he says that line to her, and she kind of takes a beat, and like, you can see her thinking, like, what do I want to say next?
What's the response here?
Yes, but she just goes, well, all right, then I'm gonna head out and I'll talk to you later. Like, and I was like, oh yeah, like battered wife right there.
100%. She's been through this so many times, and this isn't a battle worth fighting, or at least not right now, right? Like, I wonder what the interstitial scenes would be if we got to actually just spend a day with Jack and Wendy and Danny, right? Like, and obviously this is the hotel firmly at work. Like, this is a month later and he is already under its sway, and he's now just on the fast track to becoming a homicidal maniac.
Yeah.
But like, what did the first 29 days or the first 30 days look like? Because I imagine it was filled with these little microaggressions and Wendy being like, he's just hypoglycemic, or he's just missing the sauce, or, you know, the writing's not going well. Like, I can just see her making apologies and saying, but there are moments, right, where we sit down and we, you know, watch TV with Danny, or we get into bed and the moments are nice. Like, you can just imagine how this all goes.
But I guess that this is, so do you think this is supposed to be like, because this is the first like day break that we get after the month later like break in. And so do you think that this is really meant to be the first time that he has truly been like kind of overtaken by the entity of this hotel?
I said no immediately because I wanted to be like, well, it has to signify something that we start to do day dates here.
And you said he got his breakthrough today for the book. Yeah. So that would imply that this is when it fully like gets control of his mind.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what? Let's stick with that. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Listeners, what do you think?
I'm choosing to believe that nothing in that first month was interesting enough to have Kubrick show it to us.
Because there is another version of this film where you do a slower ramp up, right? Like, we both talked about how we mistakenly always remember this as a bit of a slow burn. And I think part of it is that deliberate pacing. But I feel like I always remember it being a gradual, oh, okay, he's a little bit worse today. Oh, he's a little bit worse. Right. And then we get into this final week and things just get real bad.
Yes. I wonder if it's also like we don't get to see them as a happy unit, except for maybe arguably on closing day when they're in front of people. But like,
yes,
I would assume that's also an intentional choice
putting on the show. Yeah. Putting on the show for other people.
But it's like, we don't need to see them happy because that's going to like make people, I guess, feel comfort or like hope in this from their relationship. We're not going to offer them.
Or maybe it's too devastating to see what they were before the hotel had its impact. I mean, I don't think Jack was ever a good guy.
No. Well, but that's the difference between movie Jack and book Jack.
Right. Yeah. Which again would be very difficult if you were a fan of book Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we jump from Tuesday to Thursday, and this is where we see Wendy and Danny. They're running through the snow because we started to get that big storm. The weather has definitely changed. It will be full weather conditions for the rest of the film. And Jack is just in a complete fucking daze.
This is that shot. And also,
this is the moment.
Well, because I think also like we just jumped from this to Saturday, which again feels comedic almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, so this is just what he's like all day, every day now. Like, Danny and Wendy are trying to make a winter wonderland go of it, and Jack is just... Okay, so Saturday, we're back to typing, and this is when Wendy discovers that the telephone lines are down. So she goes into Stu's office to use the radio so that we can call the forest or forestry service. I couldn't pin down exactly what they're called, but she learns that the telephones will not be repaired, and it will be this way for the rest of the winter, so she should keep this radio on.
Oops.
I mean, it's one of those things, right? You're setting things up so that you can knock them down because that's the nature of either a good screenplay or a good horror screenplay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the equivalent of there's no cell service, you know?
Honestly, I did think of that. I was like, 1980, no cell service called. This is the equivalent. Yeah. Break out that CB radio. All right, so Danny is back on the bike, except this is when we see the Grady twins, and they're not just a manifestation that Tony is putting into his head. This isn't just a flash, and this time they start talking. So previously they had always been silent, and now they want him to come play with them.
Forever and ever and ever. I actually did forget that we get insert shots of their corpses.
Yes, and this is bloody. It's not particularly graphic, but the blood does such a good job, and we remember the story of, oh yeah, Grady definitely killed them with the axe. So I think this feels more violent and bloody than it actually is.
Well, I think it's because it almost plays like a subliminal image of some sort, because it's a quick flash. I mean, it's not like it's actually, it probably is like less than a second long, but it's a thing where they're not dismembered. It is clearly like if you pause the frame, it would just be two actresses with like blood stains on their head and dress and whatever. But I don't even know if there's truly an axe wound on on screen.
I don't think so.
And
No.
if there is, apologies to the makeup person who did that. But like, but yeah, so it's interesting where it's like, yeah, I think when you walk into a movie like The Shining, if you haven't seen it, you expect it to be a lot more violent than it is. And the most you get are things like this.
Yeah, yeah. And it's haunting, right? It's not like, oh my God, we're seeing these girls get dismembered. Like, I'm thinking of the Amityville 2005 remake, right? Where we talked about how that movie is only interested in giving you everything. Like, it's going to show you Ryan Reynolds getting like blood facialed because it wants to give you the goods, but that's not how we make horror movies, or at least not at this quote unquote level back in 1980.
Well, also bear in mind, I mean, like horror still, I mean, it was kind of like, it's still the lowbrow genre. We are, well, this is 1980, so we're in the height of the slasher boom following Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, yeah, you have Stanley Kubrick, this very prestigious, like serious film director doing a horror movie.
Yeah, it is very funny to think of this movie coming out in the wake of
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, where you're just like, oh, I wonder if that's one of the other reasons that critics said, oh, well, it's not particularly scary, because this wasn't what horror was doing at the time.
Well, absolutely, right? This wasn't the kind of horror. We were getting like 85-minute slash-em-ups.
Exactly, which was like practical effects gore to the max because everybody was trying to outdo themselves.
And this is reserved by comparison.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we jump from Saturday to Monday, and this is when Danny wants to go into the apartment to collect his cars or his fire truck, and Wendy says, yeah, you can do that, just don't wake your father, because clearly we don't want to start something, so let Dad do his own thing, and when he gets up, that's that. So Danny reassures her that he will be fine, but when he goes into the apartment, he sees that Jack is already awake and just kind of sitting there staring at nothing on the bed. And Jack hugs his son, he puts him on his knee, and he admits that he wants Danny to have a good time and like the hotel so that they could stay there forever, which is, language that we have kind of heard, or it has a very creepy undertone to it.
I actually think that this is a very, very suspenseful scene in the movie because I don't know if you actually think that Jack is going to hit Danny, but there's just, the score is kicking in here too, and we get this slow zoom in as he's talking to him, but Jack Nicholson's delivery of like, I would never do anything to hurt you. I love you, Danny. I'm like, okay, that's not the most convincing argument, but...
No, I have in my notes, he ultimately reassures Danny, albeit in a scary way.
In a scary, murderous, child abusing way.
Yeah, but again, I do think if you start to buy into this incest reading, this scene takes on a completely different kind of connotation, because it's a son who is reticent to be in physical proximity to his father and sitting on the knee, right? Like, think of the hysteria that we get from pedophile Santas who, oh, my children went and sat on their lap and they were probably fondling them and stuff. And like, we see Jack give Danny a hug, and it is awkward and uncomfortable. And yeah, you could just do the conventional reading, which is Jack going to snap? Is he ultimately going to hurt his son? Or in the incest reading, it's, oh, this is just symptomatic of abuse that has been going on for a long time that no one has clocked and Danny doesn't know how to talk about.
Well, and the thing is, Wendy's probably clocked it, but she's not doing anything about it.
Yeah, or she has her suspicions and she's just like, what do I do? Yeah. Okay, so we go from Monday to Wednesday.
Okay, wait. So this is it, right? It's Wednesday, but then I guess we go into Thursday, because after Wednesday, we then start doing times.
Yes, correct. So this is effectively the last day, because everything comes to a head now.
Right, but so Thursday is the last day we get in this film, though.
Yes, but I don't think we ever say Thursday. We just get the time.
Yeah, we don't get a title card. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Wednesday, Danny gets lured into the now open room 237.
Which, dude, he's like, Mom, she's not replying to you, dude. Don't go in there.
I mean, the kid is intuitive, but we didn't say that he's like a Mensa genius or anything.
I do like that it waits this long to get Danny in, because I wonder if they're just like, it's, I mean, again, we don't get a lot of explanation in this movie, but it's like, okay, like
it's luring him in, right? Like that's why he stops. I kind of love that he has the childlike curiosity, right? That's why he stopped at the door. Oh, there's something in there, but I was told not to go in, and the door's locked anyway, so I can just keep biking. But then here, how do you deny your curiosity when the door is open?
But why
doesn't
the
be
door
so bad?
But why doesn't the door open for him? Like when he first tried to open it, like when it was locked. Why does it wait until now? It's whatever. I guess is whatever this thing or things are
because it firmly has its hooks into Jack.
Yes, and that's what I was thinking. I mean, again, there's no answer this film gives.
No.
But yeah.
Yeah. So while this is happening with Danny, and this is as much implied violence as we will see, Wendy is downstairs checking the boiler. And I did have a note. Somebody in that Reddit thread also made a note that you can read this film through the kind of shifting of parental roles. Like, a lot of people want to read the inherent sort of misogyny, the gender dynamics between Jack and Wendy. But, everyone has noted that Jack is the one who signs this contract, and then Wendy is ultimately the one who does all the fucking work.
Yes, she is. Because also, I didn't realize, because she's doing the boiler here. So this is the end of the boiler, everyone, in the film version of this movie. But,
yes, if you were drinking for the boiler, chug your drink.
Chug your drink now. But she hears, I wrote in my notes, a man screams, and I thought, oh, this is like a ghost echo. But then we'll learn that it's Jack screaming.
Indeed, yeah. So she runs back upstairs and she wakes him up. He is so scared that he has fallen out of his chair. And maybe this is a glimmer of the Jack that she knows and loves, because he seems terrified of what he has envisioned, because it is what he will ultimately try to do, which is hack them to pieces.
Oh, for sure. I think this is the last glimpse of true Jack. And unfortunately, and it's really shitty because it's not Wendy's fault, but like this next bit with Danny coming out of 237, it isolates Jack further away, which pushes him back into the grip hold, the stronghold of the spirits.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I would fully advocate for this because of what we see of Jack's experience when he goes into 237, but like the initial read of this, like the way that Wendy processes this when poor little Danny stumbles into this room and he is shell-shocked. He's processing his trauma, but he's basically nonverbal. He's got bruising around the throat as well as a ripped sweater. She naturally thinks that it is Jack because of the history, whether you want to say that's just physical abuse or sexual abuse.
Right.
But because we never actually saw what happened in 237 and we just heard Jack having a purported nightmare, you could actually read this as, no, Jack actually did do this. It's just in room 237.
Well, it's also, if we are to believe also that he has the Shining, like Danny does, it's almost like when he was asleep, he opened 237, and it's his energy that's giving that female figure all of her power.
Yeah.
She's almost like not a proxy, but like I don't know, like a stand-in for his actions or something.
I mean, that's proxy. Yeah.
Okay,
like a proxy manifestation.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the thing that I'm adding to this is the bruising suggests a physical attack, so the bruising on Danny's neck, but then the sweater is ripped, and that could suggest a kind of sexualized violence, right? Like, I think we're meant to read it at this woman tried to strangle Danny, there was a scuffle or something, and his sweater got ripped, but this is also very symptomatic of the visual language we see in movies that depict a sexual assault, right? Like, it's typically a woman, and she's kind of crying or shell-shocked, and we see that her clothing has been ripped during the scuffle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yes, we should also note that, like, the way that we're seeing Jack's response is that he seems dazed and confused, as if he almost doesn't even understand what is happening. And I will admit, I kind of had a chuckle at it because Nicholson's performance in this moment is a little bit funny. But Wendy fully goes off on him. She thinks that he has hurt Danny again. And this is, now cyclical violence on their child. And this sends Jack over the edge. So we do see him wandering into the ballroom later.
Which,
and
I don't know what score is happening here, but I have in my notes, Jack walks to the bar. This score is wild. I don't know what it is, but I thought that.
Okay. We should note that in this moment, he does say, I would give my soul for a beer. And at this moment, we transition from empty bar to now full bar with Lloyd, the bartender, who is played by Joe Turkel. And, this bar is obviously a refuge. If you want to read this film as commentary on Jack's sobriety or his struggles with alcoholism, I think that's like the bar is obviously, it goes from empty to full, and we can make that reading. Mm-hmm. But I would also argue that if we're just thinking about this from Jack as a potential repressed homosexual, this bar, this area to drink with other men, with men who support you and understand you, it does kind of offer this idea of a bit of like a homosexual haven, right? Like, Wendy will come in here at one point and you can tell that Jack is just grating again.
Oh, yeah.
We should also note that Lloyd does have this line where we talk about women can't live with them, can't live without them.
That is the best paraphrase of this dialogue exchange that I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so Jack goes on this rant. He complains that Wendy, that bitch, will never let him forget Danny's accident. It's like, dude, it was not an accident that you hurt your child. Even if you were inebriated, like that, sorry, you don't get a pass for that. And yeah, this is when Wendy runs in and you can see that she wants to apologize to Jack because Danny said there was this woman and she assaulted him and so on. And all we do is we get this very dramatic cut from which room is it to then Dick Halloran waking up in Florida. And we see that he's watching this weather report about the massive storm. But the idea is that the opening of the door of 237 is connected to The Shining and it links Dick and Danny.
Man, I'm going to tell you right now, this Dick Halloran is a very nice guy because I cannot tell you a single a stranger that I have met once that I would want to leave my paradise haven of Miami or wherever the fuck he is.
Yeah, he's in Florida somewhere.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, that is... Like, and also just to get back there, you got to get that snowcat. You got to drive through the blizzard. I'm like, just cross your fingers. Hope it's fine. You'll find out in May.
Wow. Trace feels no responsibility to his fellow man.
No, someone I don't know.
I mean, I wonder how much of this is based on the kinship that Dick shared with Danny in those moments where we were talking about The Shining. We really connected. I got the impression that it was a rarity that you would meet somebody and the fact that it is a child. And so you understand what's at risk.
Oh, I was just being a little cheeky. Like,
I know.
I get why he's doing it. I'm just saying, like, this is a lot of work to go back and save someone that may or may not be in danger. Oh, I guess he knows, really. He has The Shining.
Yes, I think that's it, right? He knows it's not just, something could happen. It's like, fuck, 237's open. Bad shit about to go down.
Yep.
So, I mean, we should note that the two of them do share this vision in this moment of Jack going into room 237. I want to say I love the heartbeats on the soundtrack in these next couple of scenes.
Ooh, and I love the, we get this, like, slow zoom in, too, which I really, really love.
Yeah, the use of zooms in this movie is quite effective, I will say. It's strategic. They're not too overbearing, but when we use them, I find them very effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is the infamous woman in the bathtub sequence. So young woman is played by Lisa Beldam, and then when she seduces him and we see her true necrotic corpse in the mirror, she is played by Billy Gibson.
I mean,
it's good. It's fine.
To me, like, this is similar to, like, the set design, even though I guess it's copied from another room at some other hotel in America, is more striking to me. I mean, I get it. I've just never found this scene as, like, quite as effective as I know many people do.
Yeah, this is going to sound so fucking judgy, and I apologize, but this to me feels like, what if you were a straight man and you thought you were kissing some young hot chick, and then she turned out to be, like, old and gross?
I mean, again, because Kubrick is dealing with psychoanalysis and Freud, that actually might very much be, like, the intent here.
Like, what if a woman misrepresented herself, but then you kissed her? oh,
Yeah.
right?
Or like if a man is having fears of kissing like a necrotic corpse, a walking necrotic corpse, what does that say about the man?
Yeah, and his relationship to his mother.
Yep, and his wife and his child.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that some people could quibble with my reading of Jack as a potential repressed homosexual because, well, why does he get excited by this young woman in the bathtub? And, there are other instances of him, I think, checking out female guests in the hotel when we're doing the closing day walkthrough. So I don't think it's a perfect reading, but I do think in this moment there's something to be made about the fact of a man who maybe purports to like, okay, well, I've got this lady and, she's not my bitch wife who keeps blaming me for the accident. So I'm gonna rail her. Yeah. And then, ooh, it didn't go my way. Ooh, my dick just kind of shriveled up a little bit. Maybe I should get out of here. 237, off limits.
That's the last we'll see of this room anyway, so.
It is, yeah. Say goodbye to the sea foam, everybody. So, Dick starts to call. So he calls and the phone lines are down. So he will eventually call the Forest Service and be like, hey, can you get them on the radio? I'm really concerned about some shit that's going down there. But of course, by the time that we figure this out, Jack will have already taken apart the radio. So that's also not going to work. I'm just doing all the Dick parts in one sort of fell swoop. They're interspersed, but essentially, yeah, he immediately gets on a plane from Florida to Colorado, bothers his friend so that he can get the snowcat, and then he makes his journey up. So while all that is happening, we're still at the Overlook. Jack returns from his experiences in 237 and he lies to his wife. So she says, what did you see? Because she sent him there to investigate the woman that Danny said attacked him. And Jack said that he didn't see anything, which is like, okay. So
we quite literally just saw something. So yeah, you're a liar, sir.
And maybe it's that he can't process whatever he's seeing, or maybe he's so firmly enthralled to the hotel at this point that he's willing to lie for it. Or maybe he didn't actually see anything in that room. What he saw was a manifestation of his own guilt and what it feels like to be touched uncomfortably.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
Okay, so Danny is still having visions of the bloody elevator. Wendy is properly freaked out. Like, this is the moment where she says, okay, weird shit is happening. Yep. Nobody's doing okay. Time to get the fuck out of here.
Meanwhile, Danny's like, red rum.
Yeah.
Red rum.
Just like, okay, son, mommy's handling the situation. I need you to stop saying the fucking murder word backwards, please.
Rum isn't red, Danny. Get over it.
Jesus Christ. Here, go to the bar. Daddy will show you around because there's lots of booze there now. Yeah, so she proposes leaving, and of course, Jack just belligerently rips into her for selfishly fucking up his life.
Oh, that is so fucking typical of you, is what he says. Like, the way he's deflecting and putting all this on her, it is so, I mean, it's so telling. Like, it's not surprising that he's doing this, because it's, like, very typical of an abuser.
Yeah, unfortunately. And again, I think we can see these sort of patterns of behavior, but it makes me feel so strongly for Wendy, and Shelley DuVall's performance is so fragile, but with strength behind it, right? Because she doesn't break. Even when she gets hysterical, even when she's crying, she doesn't back down. Like, if you think about it, she fully fucking fights her way through the entire rest of the film. It's just that she's not Linda Hamilton in a black tank top.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's one of the things where the way that some people, men, react to this character in particular, it always reminds me of how people talked about Skylar on Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah, people, I will confess, I was part of that too, and I feel so bad about it.
It's just one of those things, right, where I think the first time you watch something, you want to see people fight back and have agency and stand up for themselves, and it's really challenging to be faced with something that is quite honestly probably more realistic for a lot of people's situations. Like, there's a reason why women don't leave abusive relationships, or why they come back to them, even when they have children who have been injured and there's nowhere else to go. It's like, I don't know. I find Wendy a very unfortunately, believable character, but I do like that she has these quiet moments of agency. Like when she has the opportunity, she will fight for what she believes.
Yeah. And I mean, I gotta say, like the reaction for people when they hear about, like, you know, specifically like battered wives, and they're just like, oh, well, if you were being beat, why did you stay? And it's like, fucker, like,
yeah, because it's so fucking easy.
Yeah, exactly. I always hate that as a way to be like, it's just another way to victim blame, when it's like, why are you putting blame on the victim? Why are you doing that?
Because it's easier. Because then we don't have to take any responsibility for how we could be helping, and we're choosing not to.
And then we don't do anything else about the actual abuser, you know?
I mean, honestly, you cop to some not great behavior. I will cop to the same. You know, I remember, not to make it political, but, you know, when things have gone badly recently in elections and people are like stranded in states that don't support their lives, their identities, their gender and their sex and so on. I think for several of us, the inclination is, well, like, okay, well, just get out of there. Don't live in that county. Don't live in that city. Don't live in that state. And it's like, it's not easy. Like, do you have money you're willing to give me to get the fuck out of Dodge?
Yeah, while you're sitting on your golden throne of Canada over there.
Truly. Oh, my God. I don't love Carney, but at least he's not the other guy.
Yep.
Anyway, hopefully that will age well. You know what? We're going to look back on this in 4 years, and it's going to be like, it's going to be puppies and rainbows. Okay. Yeah. Meanwhile, we're still stuck in the shit with Jack and Wendy. So, let's see. Jack is like, fuck you for ruining my life. You don't understand me. You're a bitch. I'm going back to the bar to continue getting shit-faced on invisible drinks. So, while he's in there, it's a rager, Trace. We got a full-blown fucking party going on in the ballroom.
Oh, I'm into all this.
Except that this guy totally just spilled drinks all over Jack. So we should go to the men's bathroom to get cleaned up. So yes, we're in the bathroom and we think we realize this guy, and he's not who he says he is. So we think we recognize him as Delbert Grady, played by Philip Stone. And Jack is certain that he is the former caretaker from 1970, but this guy doth protest a little too much.
Yeah, so who is? Because I clocked this too, because he says Delbert Grady. Who is Delbert Grady?
The father of the other Grady.
Okay, because Charles
Generational
Grady,
trauma.
Yeah, okay, because Charles Grady is the daughter hacker.
Yeah. So the suggestion is that both generations of Grady went insane and are imprisoned in the hotel now.
God, I thought I had misremembered like hearing Charles's name earlier. I was like, oh, maybe it was Delbert, but that doesn't seem like a easy mistake to make.
No, 100%. I did the exact same thing. Yeah. Yeah. So this guy eventually does admit that that's who he is. And then it's funny, right? It just kind of flips on a beat. It's no, that's not me. No, you're mistaken. Okay, yes, it is definitely me. And also, do you know what your son is doing right now? He's trying to bring an N-word outsider into our space. Man. And it's like, fuck me.
The drop of the N-word, like, I mean, like, you could hear a pin drop in my apartment. It was like, oh.
Yeah. That is on the no-no list.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. I think some audience members can rightfully be not in love with this movie and its depiction of race. I think it is very purposeful and by design. It's like, the black man, yes, maybe a little too much of the magical Negro thing, but also he's a kind character, he's an intellect, and he's someone that we have strong empathy for. And I'm not going to suggest that it makes it right to then just immediately kill him when he enters the Overlook, but the reality is that I think it hits very hard, even in this day and age where we understand the racial politics aren't great. Like, I think it actually works in the film's favor by saying, like, oh, we killed this person because he's the only person who might have been able to help.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's,
because I've heard people say, like, this movie's fucking racist because it's got one black character, he shows up and just immediately dies. And part of me, I mean, I do think the movie it maybe lampshades it that it's a bit of a joke because it's like, oh my God, look at how much work Dick had to do to get here. And he just immediately dies. It feels slightly subversive. It feels like a bit of a dark joke, like some other aspects of this film. But I also think it's a testament of like, Black people are not going to do well in these spaces because white people will just immediately murder them.
Yeah, I mean, I've always viewed it more, and again, as a white man, I've always viewed it more as like, yeah, like there's no help coming for you. Like this is this is the vibe that Kubrick's putting out there. I do wonder if people would be as upset about this if Halloran died in the book as well. But he doesn't.
Yeah, okay, so tell me this, because I can't remember. What happens to Dick in the book?
I mean, he makes it out, but he helps save Danny and Wendy.
Okay, so again, if you were a fan of the book, this would be very frustrating and or confronting.
Yeah, so basically what I'm looking at, Halloran, having received a psychic distress call from Danny while working at a winter resort in Florida, rushes back to the Overlook only to be attacked by the topiary animals and severely injured by Jack.
Oh, okay.
But then it says, as Danny, Wendy, and Halloran flee, the hotel creature rushes to the basement in an attempt to vent the pressure for the boiler, but it's too late. The boiler explodes, killing Jack and destroying the Overlook. Halloran guides Danny and Wendy to safety, and it says in the epilogue of the book, set during the next summer, Halloran has taken a chef's job at a resort in Maine, of course, comforts Danny over the loss of his father, and as Wendy recuperates from the injuries Jack inflicted on her.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing about the Bane bit.
I know. But that's why, though, in the film version of Dr. Sleep, like, Halloran's still a character in King's book, but he's killed off in Kubrick's film, so he has to be like a ghost figure in Dr. Sleep.
Yeah. He's more of a mentor figure for adult Danny. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're actually not at the murder just yet, but we're getting closer.
Yeah.
So, at this point, Jack is down in the bar schmoozing with all the party guests, maybe getting a handy in the bathroom from Grady, and Wendy is back up in the apartment, and Danny is like down for the count. So Wendy is like, okay, it's a lot of red rum, and I need to work up the courage to get the fuck out of here. So this is what we're going to do, because Danny isn't even here anymore. At this point, it's all Tony all the time, and that is pretty upsetting. Like, if you were a parent, this would be, oh shit, my child is damaged.
Yeah. And I don't even remember too if Dr. Sleep really delves into Tony as a character or not, but
I don't remember.
Yeah, I love that, like, we don't ever really dive, at least in this movie, don't dive into what he is. Or is it just like, is it Danny just but his shining? So I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get the big reveal. So Wendy is like, we should get the fuck out of here, but she's not ready to give up on Jack. You know, he's treated her badly, but this was par for the course. So she leaves Tony to the cartoons. We should note, in case you were wondering, I haven't said all of them. I would encourage people to read Egger's piece, but like, even here, when Danny is just watching these cartoons, beep, beep. Beep, beep. You can actually see that there's a bear behind him on the couch. So it's like, he often wears red, like Winnie the Pooh. Doc calls him, you know, are you Winnie or are you so on? So like, there's tons of mentions of bears, Winnie the Pooh, and so on. But yeah, like visually codified. And Wendy leaves Tony behind, and she goes, and lo and behold, we discover that the manuscript Jack has been working so diligently on contains only one phrase.
Which, this is again, this is the thing, like, when I saw this movie, I already knew about all the major parts, so I knew this was coming.
Yeah,
this
hits.
It still hits. I also, because actually, what I do think is pretty scary about this scene is that we shift to Jack's POV as he's approaching behind her, but
yeah,
we keep cutting back also to Shelly DuVall, because also she keeps flipping through the pages. At that point, I'm like, girl, after page 30, they're probably all going to say the same thing, but she just keeps looking.
It's because the pile is so big.
It's so big. Oh, and there's typos. I love the typos in it too. That's such a nice touch.
The typos, the fact that he has done different kind of indent formatting,
yes.
All the just
like it looks like a book.
It looks like a book. He's been working so hard on this. You can tell there's a part of him that's like, I have done it, and instead, the maniac in him is like, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
I do love this though. So for foreign cuts of the film, they actually had to type up phrases in different languages.
Oh, I love that.
So, like in German, what it says is "never put off till tomorrow what may be done today."
Oh, okay.
In French, it's "one here you go is worth more than two you'll have it's." Basically, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Right.
And for Spanish viewers, they get "no matter how early you get up, you can't make the sun rise any sooner."
Oh, you know what? I like all of those. Embroider them on a pillow.
Honestly.
And just put them on my bed.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, as you mentioned, Jack is actually sneaking up on her, and this is when he really lays into the kind of mocking tone. So he keeps saying, what should be done with Danny? What should we do with him? And he then threatens to bash her brains in on the stairs, and she's like, fully... like, just so distraught. This man cannot be trusted. It's not, oh, I'll reason with him, or, oh, he just needs time to cool off. It's, I've got a bat, and I need to take this motherfucker out.
Yeah. I love his progress. This whole scene is so good. It's sometimes funny, like, the way he's acting, but then you cut to her, and it's like, oh, this is, like, upsetting.
Yeah. This is the big scene. Yeah. And it plays really, really well. I think part of it is that it's also a scene that feels like it takes its time. Like some of the other aspects have been, okay, it's, Jack dealing with his own stuff, Wendy having her own private breakdown. But here it's when they finally come back together, we just sit in the moment. Like we are on these stairs for, it feels like, several minutes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, here's her agency. She hits him.
She does hit him. She knocks him out, and she makes a smart move. She puts him into the freezer, and she locks him in.
Oh, I did write that. I get it. Like, she's probably just, like, traumatized, so she's not really thinking clearly. But I wrote, good God, this moment with the pin out of the freezer door. Well, because, like, she just keeps trying to open the door, but it's locked because the pin is in there. And I was like, all you have to do was just... But it's just so annoying.
Whereas I put it in my notes, oh, my God, this is so relatable content. Because when I get frantic, my brain just shuts off. So this idea that, like, I'm going to push on a pull door for 4 or 5 tries. Yeah, I've been there in real life.
It's fully have you seen my sunglasses? You're wearing
They're
them.
on your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen my axe? Oh, it's in your hand. Oh, is that my wife? She's dead. Yeah. So she yells through the door that she's going to leave, and Jack is still completely maniacal. So he just laughs and says she should go check out what he's gotten up to. So this is when we get the reveal that he has not just taken out the radio, but also he has disabled their snowcat.
You got a big surprise coming to you.
So at 4 p.m., this is our final time, we have Jack getting released from the freezer by Grady. But I do love the fact that even Grady, he says, your wife appears to be stronger than we have imagined, or we had imagined. Yeah. And you're just like, yeah, even the ghosts recognize it. But yeah, so we make one final deal that if the ghosts help Jack out of the freezer, which to me is cheating. It's not playing fair. Poor Wendy. So this is where Tony is busy writing Red Rum. Like, basically, Wendy thinks that she's okay for now. And, she needs to take a bit of a lie down because, Jesus Christ, the snowcat has been disabled. So she's laying down. Tony is repeatedly saying Red Rum. And then we finally get her waking up and realizing he's been saying murder backwards.
Which, ooh!
In my notes, I also wrote, check Tony for dyslexia.
Well, he had, that backward R, man.
Yeah. So, this is when Jack, because he's out of the freezer, he begins to break down the door with the axe. Of course, one of the most infamous moments in horror history. And I like that we talk about this. We've seen this homage in a billion. It's like
things.
Blood Elevator and then this. And it's a great moment for all of them. But I love the kind of quiet ingenuity of Wendy just takes Danny and says, yeah, I know that's about a 20-foot snowdrift out this window, but I'm going to be right behind you. Yeah, it's safer for you to go into the freezing cold snowstorm. She just pushes him and up he goes. And I'm like, yeah, that's... like, she's doing what she needs to do to protect her child. And she's trying to get out as well. It's just that window doesn't open and she can't get out.
Yeah, but I mean, again, like the shot of just the axe coming through the door, but like we're just looking at Wendy just screaming, holding a knife, and again, she cuts him. She does. She saves herself.
Yeah, it's not like she waits for him to get all the way through, and then she cowers with the knife or something. She fully cuts him, and then he flees because he's a whiny little bitch.
Yep.
And also because he realizes, okay, I can go and get Danny, who is the person I actually want, because, of course, his attention is mostly on Danny. And this is when we do ultimately kill Dick, because he has wandered, unfortunately, into the line of fire.
And yeah, I mean, I get all the racial implications of this, but I do, the surprise of this, because it feels simultaneously like, well, why are we going, as you said, why are we going through all this and we're just going to kill him right away? But man, it is a shock that this character gets killed right now.
Yeah, it just comes around the corner and acts right to the chest.
And we actually stay with Jack for a while before he hides to go kill Dick, while we're hearing Dick yelling, like, is anyone here? Like, hello, what's going on? I'm like, Dick, come on, man.
Well, I mean, I guess in his mind, he's probably hoping to get there before all of this escalates, so he doesn't actually know what he's wandered into. But yeah, it's kind of like, how come no one is answering you, Dick? You should have assumed the word, like maybe a gun, anything.
Dude, right?
Arm yourself with something just in case.
Unfortunately, even a gun wouldn't have helped him, because he's killed like immediately when Jack jumps out from behind this column.
Yeah, like this is a full-blown slasher attack, right? Okay, so Dick is down. That means that we are free to begin chasing Danny. So it's Jack versus Danny outside. But Wendy, meanwhile, doesn't know where anybody is. So she's running around the hotel with her knife. Trace, let's talk about the furry blowjob.
Oh, yes. This is a man. Well, I'm presuming the dog bear man is a man and not a woman. But this is gay fellatio.
Indeed. And this is a scene that apparently perplexes a lot of folks. Like, the reason that Ager writes an entire 2-chapter piece on this is because apparently a bunch of people just wrote in and said, what the fuck is with the dog/bear guy?
It's in the book.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. So I'll give credit to Jason Almaneas, who wrote a piece called "It Took Me 27 Years to Finally Understand That Scene in The Shining" for Modern Horrors. But
clickbait.
Yeah, the rundown for this is a character from the book. So the older gentleman who sits up and gives Wendy a kind of like, bitch, mind your business look.
I'm trying to get off.
Yeah, so this is Horace Derwent in the book, and he is the wealthy former owner of the Overlook Hotel. The dog, yes, in the book, is Roger, a man who is having a sexual affair with Roger, and Derwent is playing a sadistic game with Roger. So in the book, he invites him to come to the ball in this costume so that he can humiliate his lover. And obviously that gets completely removed from the film, so all we see is this one out of context shot of one man maybe giving another man a blowjob, because that suit definitely would not allow you to actually get to a penis.
Yeah.
But I think, this is me now talking, I think this lends credence to the idea that the hotel is a site that's founded on illicit sexual desire and possible deviancy, i.e. room 237. But it's also maybe a site where queer men were welcome to engage in their desire. So if we're seeing vestiges of ghosts, these are men who came to the hotel to explore passion and desire that they couldn't express anywhere else. And Wendy is seeing that. And I do think it's interesting that her expression, like she's about to see skeleton ghosts in the hallway. She's about to see Grady with like a giant cut on his face that's bleeding. She's about to see the blood elevator. And her reaction to seeing a gay blowjob is on par with everything else that she's about to see. So I'm like, bitch, why are you so frightened by this? And here's the reason, Trace. So visually, I've been talking nonstop about this fucking bear shit throughout the entire episode, right? So if we read this as a bear or a furry, this thing looks identical to the pillow that I mentioned at the top when the doctor comes to see Danny. We've been seeing bears. Danny has been codified as Winnie the Pooh and so on throughout the entire thing. And then there's the framing of this scene. So we see this man in the furry costume, butt flap exposed as he is giving head, and then he pops up and looks at Wendy. If you go back and look at the framing of Danny when he's brushing his teeth, it's identical identical. So
Okay.
Danny and this bear is the stand-in, and this idea, again, if you're reading, sorry folks, this is really awful. If you're thinking about the incest reading, this is Wendy realizing when she sees this moment, she has seen her son giving her husband head.
I have to say I like that. I don't like that, but I actually that comes together a lot more seamlessly than how you positioned it earlier in the episode.
What, the bear? The bears didn't do it for you earlier?
No. I mean, I guess I see how someone would come to this conclusion using that line of reading or that line of thinking.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I was like, yeah, no one else is supposed to be in this fucking hotel, and she sees a bear person giving a blowjob to some dude. Like, that would be scary.
It would admittedly be weird. Yeah, you'd be like, wait, what? Here's the thing. She looks properly scared, and maybe it's just, because there isn't supposed to be anybody here, and all of a sudden I'm seeing this weird sexual activity, but she is so scared. Like, if I see random fellatio compared to, a hallway full of ghosts.
Yeah.
I'm not having the same reaction.
That is true. Well, I guess maybe, if she had seen the if she had seen the room of skeletons first, maybe this would be like, oh my God, please help me. There's also my notes. That's a lot of skeletons.
It is indeed. Like, what kind of party were they having? Okay, yes. So all of this to say, Wendy is having all of these fun, ghostly experiences, and meanwhile, her son is being threatened in the hedge maze. So it's snowing, it's very cold, we are not wearing jackets, and I have to say, I love the Steadicam work as we follow Danny as he is just running around and around, and it feels like it is calling back to his journey around and around on the bike that we saw earlier in the film.
Well, it's because Kubrick's like, we have the Steadicam and its inventor, so we better get some... I also just can't even imagine, though, because the footprints in the snow play a big part in the actual narrative of this climax, but also filming this if you're doing 60 takes.
Oh my God, yeah. And I assume that this is all fake snow. This is not shot on location or anything. So they look cold. It probably wasn't actually cold unless Kubrick is maybe also a sadist, which... But yeah, like this looks arduous because this is also not a short sequence.
No, not at all. I mean, the thing is, the movie's going to be over in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, this is our climax, which I wonder, do you remember the first time you saw this? Did you find this a little abrupt or anticlimactic? Like, I remember thinking, okay, we're not going to do a battle. This is about outsmarting somebody.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is one of those movies. I knew everything because, so I knew this is how it was going to end. I guess though it still does feel. I mean, and we can talk about the picture or whatever, but I guess it does feel weird that we don't really get to see the aftermath of this. And
no,
there apparently was a scene. Like an epilogue coda type thing that was filmed.
Yes, Stewart goes to check on Wendy and Danny in the hospital. By the way, if you look at it, it looks like he's wearing a fur coat, i.e. a bear suit.
There you go. But it was cut. And I guess I get it, though. It's like...
I don't think we need it.
I don't think we necessarily need it. And it does make the ending feel much scarier, even though it's... I mean, they get away.
They do get away, yeah, so they climb into the snowcat. I love that Wendy comes out just in time to grab Danny. It feels so fortuitous, and of course, as sad as it is that Dick met this untimely and kind of ungraceful end, the fact that he provides the method of escape. So it's not the book, but he does play a part in helping mother and son to get down the mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I honestly think that there's a bit of a comedic beat in this cut where we go from Jack screaming his son's name, lost in the maze, because even though he was looking at that model, he didn't fucking study it, apparently. And then we just see Jack Nicholson's frozen corpse sticking out of the ground.
Yeah, it's I can't believe it because I do think that the property that spoofs this part really well is there's a South Park episode where Randy buys a Blockbuster because he's like, we're gonna be so rich, but then it's like no one goes to Blockbuster, so Blockbuster is the Overlook Hotel.
Wow.
It's really funny. But
do they roam the aisles and it's like the hedge maze?
Well, and there's like ghosts. It's like, I can't find Turner and Hooch. Help! But he gets frozen outside.
Oh, okay.
It's Stan's dad, Randy.
Right. All right. That's not bad. So, yeah, the movie ends with this infamous slow zoom in on the black and white photograph, and we see that it's July 4th, 1921. So this is the party that Jack, of course, wandered into in the gold ballroom, and he is forever immortalized there. I do want to say, before we close out, Edgar has one final other funny, it's a completely sort of separate alternative reading, that none of this actually happened and that we have actually moved into Jack's terrible book. So this idea that when the shift happens, I would argue probably around the point of that final week, is that the dialogue starts to shift. It feels like some of the characters aren't acting or behaving the way that they were, like as competently, particularly Dick in his not great dialogue when he's making all of his phone calls. This idea that this is actually Jack working through his issues by, instead of committing murder, he actually just writes it on the page. And this is Jack's shitty book.
That's interesting. I
was like, okay, maybe. I need to sit with that one.
I think the most obvious interpretation of this, and the one that I've always kind of subscribed to, is that, because there's a line earlier, I think it's Delbert Grady that says, I've always been here. We've all always been here. And it's like...
Yeah, and it lends credence to the cycles of abuse, right? Because as we said, there's multiple Gradys, and this idea that, like the sins of the father passed down onto the son. Yeah, like I think it definitely works in this way that once people become trapped here, they're always there.
Yeah, I guess, but it's just like, if you die, if the Overlook gets its hooks into you, to borrow your phrase, and you die there, then you're going to be a part of this everlasting dance party in 1921. Although, I do think it's interesting, though, that it's 1921, even though we know the hotel was built in 1907.
Yeah, I'll confess, this is one of those pieces where I thought, there's got to be something there, and I wonder if people have written about it or dissected why this particular date, and I didn't have time to really look into it, so listeners, if you have an answer, I would love to know. But yeah, I found this particular date interesting, because it's also a summer party, right? It's the July 4th party.
Right, yeah, so it's like, what is the significance of this event at all? Because we've also never been like maybe it'd be too obvious if we had a character earlier say, this big tragedy happened in the July 4th party of 1921.
Yeah, but, I mean, I guess the easy reading is just the party that Jack walks into when he's surrounded by everybody before he gets the drink spilled on him. Maybe that's meant to be reflective of the July 4th party.
I guess.
I don't know.
I mean, either way, this last bit, I'm kind of like, it's cool, but it's never really been something that I'm like, I want to ever really dive into. What does this mean?
Yeah, it's not like an oh shit moment. It's more, okay, so Jack kind of got what he wanted. He's the life of the party, and he gets to be somewhere without his fucking bitch wife and his annoying son. Like, he's just immortalized forever.
He does look happy.
He looks like he's having a great time.
Yeah, I would go to that party.
Sure. I mean, the booze was flowing. People looked fancy dressed. So yeah.
Oh boy. But I mean, that's The Shining.
That is The Shining. Yes. Happy 45th.
Jesus Christ, 45th anniversary. Final thoughts on this, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I have now done my annual every 2 to 4 year rewatch. I'll probably come back to this in a little bit. And I just say, like, justice for Wendy. I feel like every time I watch this, I gain new appreciations for DuVall's performance, and particularly the character of Wendy. I think in some ways I have reappropriated her, and I think she is kind of an early prototype for Final Girl, just maybe not the one that people naturally think of.
I think she's what a normal person, how a normal person would behave in these situations.
Yeah, she's doing her fucking best, and she gets out alive, and she takes that kid with her.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I quite enjoyed this rewatch. I do respect the hell out of this movie, and I do like that I was really able to feel the isolation of this the most on this watch, thanks to my pal marijuana. But
makes everything a little easier.
But again, like it's never been like a top 10 horror film for me. I think it's one of those things where I can say, I think, not to use that fucking cultural footprint phrase again, but it's like, I mean, yeah, this has like obviously left a mark, and it's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's never affected me in the same way it has others, but I still like it a lot.
Yeah, and that's fine. As We Hate Movies likes to say, it's okay to like a movie, it's okay to love a movie, or it's okay to be like, meh.
Yeah. But, okay, so some quick housekeeping before we announce what we're covering next week. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Blue Sky and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. If you want to chat with other listeners, please join our new Horror Queers Discord, link in the show notes. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. If you subscribe today, you'll get 389 hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on The Ugly Stepsister, Clown in a Cornfield, Until Dawn, Final Destination Bloodlines, a brand new audio commentary on Another Simple Favor, and our brand new Patreon tier, The Requel, where we're doing episode-by-episode recaps of The Last of Us Season 2.
Indeed, yeah. And folks, we're coming up on the end of that, which means that if you subscribe, you'll be able to hear all of the episodes.
Yes. And it has been a journey.
It's been a journey. I feel so educated by you.
I'm so happy about that. Yeah, if you want to hear me geek out over video game stuff in a way that I don't get to do normally, please go listen to that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Joe.
Yes.
What are we talking about next week?
Okay, well, sadly, we have to leave Stephen King behind again. I mean, we'll be back to his territory in no time at all, I'm sure. But we instead are going to turn our attention back to a certain someone who has already become one of our favorites. We're going to revisit someone whose work we talked about just earlier this year, Trace, because popular demand dictates that we check out Frankenhooker.
Woo! First time watch for both of us, I believe, right?
It is indeed, yeah. She's celebrating an anniversary, so we thought, what better time than to dive back into the world of Frank Henenlotter?
Yes, and I'm really excited for this, especially after watching Brain Damage. So everyone go prep for it by listening to our Brain Damage episode, and then, come down with us on this Frankenhooker journey.
Yeah, do you want a date, Trace?
God. But until next time, we can cross out The Shining.
Indeed, and cross out Horror Queers.